So a few years ago, Bitcoin spiked to around $20,000. And everybody and their grandma was rushing to buy as much as they could. People mortgaged their homes to purchase Bitcoin. And then shortly after that, it dropped down to like 13. And all of these people panicked, not literally everybody, but a lot of these people panicked and sold everything and said it was a mistake. I can't believe I fell for this. Now I'm in debt. And now Bitcoin is at $100,000. So lesson learned, I hope, for the people who bought and just said, I'm chill. We'll just sit back and wait, not panic. They just got a 5x return on their investment. Bitcoin has consistently done this, and anybody who's been paying attention knows that. I'll just put it this way, guys. You know, my one regret is knowing about Bitcoin since 2011 and not just using it as a bank account, essentially. If every time I got a paycheck, I bought Bitcoin instead of putting it in the bank, I'd have hundreds of millions of dollars. So the guys are laughing now because
that's actually what he does. And I actually don't have a Bitcoin bank account, but Jack does. So
Jack, let's go around and have everybody introduce themselves. Who are you? What do you do?
My name's Jack. I've been in Bitcoin for 12 years, and I'm the founder CEO of Strike, and we sell Bitcoin financial services.
So you're rich.
I'm all right. How about this? I own $0.
Yeah.
I own Bitcoin, my house, my business. That's it. It's been that way for a long time.
Right on, sir.
Yeah, I'm Ben Askren. I was a wrestler fighter on wrestling academies. I would say Bitcoin advocate. I did not get into it as early as you guys. I was 2017, but this is going into my third cycle, so I'm all in.
Right on.
Yes.
And I'm Ben Werkman. I'm probably the face that a lot of people here aren't going to know, but I got into Bitcoin back in November of 2013. And then ever since then, I went down the journey, and I really started covering the equities that were getting involved in Bitcoin. So companies like MicroStrategy has really been what I've started to cover in the corporate adoption and companies shifting over to a Bitcoin treasury standard for themselves. So it's been a fun ride, and I'm really happy to be here with you guys.
I got a couple stories to start off for you guys. Mm-hmm. So I think, most people who know my Bitcoin story, who watch the show, have heard this, but bear with me so I can tell these gentlemen so they can laugh at me. In 2011, in like January, I was hanging out at a hackerspace in California. Bitcoin's at 70 cents. Mm-hmm. Or it was like March or something, somewhere around there. And I look over my buddy Jeff. I'm looking at you, Jeff. And I said, I was like, I got $5,000 saved. I'm not going to do anything with it. What if I just bought a bunch of this Bitcoin stuff? I mean, it's sitting in the bank anyway. Mm-hmm. And he goes, I don't know, man. You're going to give all your money to some dude on the internet for what, internet points? And then what? It's a scam? They run off with your money? And I was like, yeah, I guess good point. And then I think a few months later, like $5. Mm-hmm. And I was like, damn, I would have had so much money. Now, I think if you do the math, it's something like $400 million. But to be fair, come on. If I bought Bitcoin at 70 cents, as soon as it hit $5, I would have cashed out and been jumping up and down with 20 some odd grand, being like, yeah. The other funny story is, I've known Max Kaiser for a really long time, Max and Stacy. It's like a couple years after this, Bitcoin's at, I don't know, like $17. And Max is like, Tim, hang out with me long enough, you're going to be rich. And I'm like, okay, Max. And he's like, just buy Bitcoin. I'm telling you to hold on to it. And I was like, yeah, I'll buy Bitcoin. I don't know, whatever. And I sold what little Bitcoin I had when I needed some cash for rent. And if I had just listened to what Max was telling me, I'd probably have $100 million.
Yeah.
So then, regret, I suppose, at some point a couple years after that, I was just like, I'm just going to buy a bunch of Bitcoin. And so in the mid-2010s or whatever, I bought a good amount. And I'm very, very happy with my purchase.
Go. Nice.
But tell me about where you guys are at. And
I was telling these guys before, and we were saying the Microsoft, they just put it up for vote of their company should buy as a treasury reserve asset. Bitcoin, it was 99.45, do not buy it. And I said, that's like what society's at right now is 99.45. Don't understand Bitcoin. There's probably 0.5 that do. And you have to take a few steps to really understand Bitcoin. And I think the very, very first step that most people don't understand is what is money. Mm-hmm. They don't understand that. And if you can't understand what is money, you obviously won't get Bitcoin. And then, the second step is, well, what is good money? Like what values do I want the money that I hold to have? And so, most of my liquid assets are in Bitcoin, but Jack's further. Jack doesn't have a bank account. He said, I think he probably talked me into it, but I'll probably talk to him more afterwards and go all the way down that rabbit hole. But, so once you understand what is money and then what is good money, then you can start taking the road to Bitcoin. And if you don't understand those things, you may just be in for the number go up. Oh, number went up. I made money. Oh, right. Great. And that's it. You don't understand. That's all you understand.
Well, so you transact everything in Bitcoin?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I approach it with first principle of the dollar only goes down with time. How much do you want to own of a thing that only goes down? None of it. Okay. Bitcoin only goes up with time. How much of the thing that only goes up do you want to own? As much as possible. So I looked myself in the mirror at some point and I said, well, why do I own any dollars if they only go down? Is it because I've been programmed and my first principle thinking has been stripped from my brain by going to university? Why do I own any of these things? And so the way I set up my life and our company, we sell this product, but I'm not even here to be a salesman, is I get my paycheck, direct deposit, 100% converted into Bitcoin, and it's a account routing number, and I pay my bills from my Bitcoin balance as well. So I spend on credit cards. Credit cards are a great product for me because I get to spend the thing that only goes down without having to own it. Right. And so I got whatever, Amex, Chase Sapphire, Fidelity card. And then at the end of the month, my account pulls from my Bitcoin, converts to Bitcoin, pays the bills. Automatically. And people get really hung up on the tax burden. But what people don't understand is Bitcoin is taxed as a capital gain. Capital gain means you made money. Capital gain means Bitcoin went up. And so, yes, the fact that I have to share my gain with the government, we can talk about, the philosophical debate all day long. But the reality is this: I'd rather give the government a little bit of my gain than have gotten debased and inflated. That's the ultimate tax, is if I'm sitting in dollars. So the fact that I'm in the best performing asset of all time and I have to share a little bit with the government when I pay a bill, that's a way better deal than just getting persistently poor forever. And so, listen, like, Bitcoin's up over 100% this calendar year. 100% is a fancier way for those at home of saying the thing's more than doubled. More than doubled if it's my base checking account, if it's my capital asset. That's another way of saying my life's gotten over half off this year. So, right? I mean, in fiat, in dollar terms, what is just getting by today is poverty tomorrow. In Bitcoin, what is poverty today is good enough for tomorrow, right? So I've reversed my life entirely. Things get cheaper for me.
But what's crazy too about the taxes is if you end up owing taxes at the end of the year, they charge you the inflationary interest.
Oh yeah.
So it's like if you owe $100 in January, next January it's $104. You got to pay them more because you lost.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
So crazy.
Yeah, and Jack's done a real big service for common people, right? Because he's putting it in a way now where it becomes very familiar to everybody. I think early on in Bitcoin and when everyone's going down their own journey, people start with it as this really speculative asset, and they think that really the only thing you can do with it is trade it. That's kind of the way everyone viewed it for a very long time. And that was actually how I started out. I bought Bitcoin back in 2013, made the joke with my dad saying maybe we should just buy 1,000, see how it works. Right?
Oh, man.
We didn't do that, unfortunately. But then it went from $270 to $1,400. I sold the initial amount that I bought, thought I was a trading genius, right? Like it was a good feeling. I thought I won, right? And now time's gone on and you realize what it is that you were holding. And it took me a couple of years, probably until 2017, to really have it click for me what was happening. And that when you're looking at Bitcoin, the beauty that it brings to us is it gives everyone an education in economics that they're not going to get anywhere else.
Yes.
Right? Most people, when you go to school, they'll teach you all of your standard talking points around inflation, but you don't really understand how it impacts your life and the life of the people you care about. And the reason that Bitcoin really grabbed me was because it was the only one of these digital assets that people told other people they care about it. They weren't trying to get people into a speculative play to pump it. Like, you're telling your family members, you're telling your close friends, like it's one of the only assets that you find these communities going, no, really, I want you to get into this, and I want you to get into this because I see what's happening broadly in the world that you're not seeing yet.
Yeah.
It's a protective thing that we can bring to the people we care about, and I think that's a really big component of what Bitcoin's brought, and it's really helped get the message out in a way that shows people there's an alternative now. There didn't used to be. You used to be trapped in the fiat system. Now there's an alternative, and Jack's building the rails for how the rest of the world's going to be able to use this.
Well, the what is money is the critical piece, in my opinion. I couldn't agree with Ben more.
What is it?
So money is the market good that you acquire not to consume. Very simple, but super important. I acquire a cheeseburger to eat it. I acquire a plane or a car to transport me. I acquire money not to eat it, not to move me around, not to live in it like a house. I acquire it to store, save, and exchange my labor, my effort, my time, my energy. Money is your time and energy in an abstracted form. Before money, we had barter. In a society of 10 people, barter's fine. Hey, you go hunt, you go build the homes, you take care of the kids. At dinner, we all exchange our services and our contributions to society. You want an economy of 8 billion people. You need an instrument to abstract your time, energy, effort, labor into a monetary market good that you acquire, again, not to consume it. Now, people think money is what we decide we want it to be. If I wanted water bottles to be money, I could be money. And
Bottle caps.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And trading cards. And because the government decided dollars are money, then that's what money is. Money is not. Money is a technology just like an airplane. If I decided an airplane was a banana and I tried to fly here to do this podcast on a banana, I would have killed myself. There would have been physical harm because it's not the right technology to have flown me through the clouds. Same with money is if I decide money is dollars, it's poor technology. I will just end up poor. I will end up with less food, less housing, less travel, less kids, less vacation, less stuff. So money, the most important property of money as a market good is scarcity. How hard is it to create more of it? Because I'll tell you this, if they can debase your money, and money is your time and energy in abstracted form, by proxy, they're debasing you.
Yep.
When they're making the money less valuable, they're making you less valuable.
But first it's gold and precious metals.
Yep.
Right. So if we go back, it's I actually have these really cool. I have a silver Greek coin, and gold was valuable. I guess we largely believe because it's easy to press and it's relatively scarce. So that way,
durable.
right.
Yes.
So these rulers were like, okay, it's going to be hard for someone to counterfeit this, and then we can assert that this is a valuable thing. Yeah. And then at some point, you get people saying like, well, I'll store it in the bank. It's too heavy. And then they'll write me a note saying, here's how much I got. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then eventually it's like, I'll just give you the note. I don't got to go get the gold. You can just hand this to them and they'll give you the gold. And then eventually the government went, we don't even need the gold. Yeah. Severed the gold from it and said, now you have government pieces of paper that we determine as valuable. And if you try and copy it, we'll lock you up. And through threat of force and violence, they maintain that control. But now that they can print and access to infinity, and largely because it's become a digital, like the U.S. currency, I believe, is like 98% digital. Yes. They can just type in a computer, enter, boom, there's money. Yes. Instantly, all of your money becomes worth less. The easy way to explain it is, if there are 10 apples in the market being shared between people, there's a value of that apple. If the government then comes in and then just gives everybody at the same time a ton of money, they're all of their like they've just given themselves half the value of that labor force. They come in and buy all the apples. Yes. So
and that's happened with other monies. Think about the rye stone. And they were using that for a currency, and then some British explorer came and they mined it all and they brought it in, and it debases the currency immediately. The other thing I think we should note that we haven't said yet is we have been talking strictly about U.S. dollars, and U.S. dollars is actually the best fiat currency. Most fiat currencies are significantly worse than the U.S. dollar, inflating at much higher rates. And because we've had the world reserve currency, we've been like insulated from further debasement, but of the 8 billion people, 300-some million live in America, and we've had the best treatment of fiat currency. But there's a lot of countries who are way worse off where, they get their paycheck on Friday. By Monday, their currency is worth less.
That's true, but I like using the U.S. dollar because now it's real in America. Sure. It used to be, you guys don't understand what the government's doing. Trust me, if you lived in Nigeria, you'd recognize it. Now, if you live in Manhattan, you recognize it. Yeah. And really, for me, it's no man should work for what another man can print. And so I don't do dollars strictly out of just principle. Yeah. I will not live my life and contribute my time and energy for what another man can print. The properties money needs, scarcity is the most important, but it needs to be saleable and liquid. You need to be able to exchange it at any point for whatever you need. You need to have liquidity. It needs to be divisible. It's a measuring instrument in an economy. It needs to be able to measure a grain of sand or a professional sports team. So it needs to be able to scale to any transaction size. It needs to be portable. I got to be able to move it. I need to be able to verify its authenticity. If I can't tell the difference between a fake and a real one, these are the properties that define if a money is a good technology to solve the problem. I'll tell you where gold failed. Gold failed when you want a digital economy of billions of people. you were reliant on a central party, corporation, or government to achieve transaction finality. When gold was physical in the local, I went to the local butcher, gave him a gold coin. I went to the local tailor, gave him a gold coin, and it was peer-to-peer. Gold was fine. As soon as we scaled the world to billions and we were on the internet, I have to deposit my gold to the government and trust that Bitcoin is digital gold in this. It's not only a physical bearer instrument, but it's a network. It's a network that can achieve transaction finality without the central party. That's why it's better.
I know this is a little cliche to say, but you really need to just think about it. The U.S. dollar system is a Ponzi scheme.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Quite literally.
100%.
And the reason Ponzi schemes are illegal is because this dude was just basically like, hey, I'll do what the government's doing. And then they're like, no, only we can do that. We have the guns. So the way I have to describe it in the simplest of terms is, if the four of us all agree that, we're going to trade this tech deck over here, I'm going to give it to you for $1, you give it to him for $1, that all of the value of the labor that we're doing is inside our community. Mm-hmm. Along comes some dude with a gun who says, I got a tech deck, and he holds up this weird piece of garbage, and he says, I can now insert it into, with doing no labor, you will now accept my goods for your labor. So what the government basically does by printing money, they do no labor, but convince you to give you theirs.
Exactly.
They use that to fund wars and other, who knows what, hamsters on drugs fighting. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
They took hamsters, they gave them cocaine and made them fight.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, I do understand.
That sounds like a useful way to spend money.
They wanted to know what cocaine did to mammals. Whatever. I kind of think maybe you shouldn't print money and then give out these grants to just do these things. But once the government was able to have an infinite Ponzi scheme, the insanity started to envelop our society.
Yeah. There's I love the book Fiat Ruins Everything by Jimmy Song. I don't know how you guys feel about that book, but he kind of talks about this process where you can print essentially infinite amount of money and you can do whatever you want.
Go nuts.
You absolutely go nuts. The one that I thought would be most relevant to kind of what you talk about a lot is war. And so most people don't understand, before we could print as much money as we wanted, we had to finance the war. And when the war couldn't be financed, then the war was over because we didn't have any money for it. And so we had to sell war bonds. Do you guys support the war? Okay, give me your money. If you support it, you buy the bonds. And then once you're not ready to support it, you don't buy the bond. And then the war's over because we can't finance it. And now we're in these freaking forever wars because we could just print as much money as we want. How much did we give to Ukraine? I don't know. How much did we?
$200 billion or something at this point.
Well, but they keep failing the audits. So we don't actually know because they can't pass the audits.
Yep.
I think there's an argument to be made that you can't have fiat currency without war, and you can't have war without fiat currency.
Fair, yeah.
I think the last 100 years has been the century of war because the last 100 years have been the century of nation states printing money.
Yeah. I mean, in the it's got a good ring to it. There will be war without fiat, but to this scale that we are seeing, modern warfare exists because the government doesn't need to ask the people to support its wars. It just makes the money. This is a problem of just general population scale, right? So we talk about, why are people mad at cops? Why do you end up with defund the police? Or why are people mad at healthcare CEOs? If you go back 300 years, you have a small town of a couple hundred people, and there's a guy who's known to be a dick who's dumping human waste in the river. He shows up to buy bread, and they go, you get out of here. You screwing everything up for everybody. He knows that he's got a community of people who are going to excise him. They're going to ostracize him. All the people are like, no, you can't be exiled, or we can't do these things. Now, a corporate CEO who's screwing people over and knows it can walk into any Starbucks, any store, and there's never going to be any social consequence. Yeah. So the U.S. government, the people know they're ripping them off. The people know these wars are bad. They continually express their distaste for these wars, but the people who are making the war machine happen have anonymity and will walk into any store, any building, and no one's going to say anything. There's no shame, there's no shunning, there's nothing. Because of that, they can keep printing money and keep ripping us off while we know it's happening.
Yeah. The misuse of the dollar is really what's going to be its own downfall, right? We saw it particularly when the U.S. weaponized the financial system against Russia when the Ukraine war started. And that was really a big red flag to all the other nations to evaluate their standing. If you're completely reliant on the SWIFT network and the U.S. dollar, your country is now vulnerable to another country changing their opinion of you, and they can start cutting you off from the economics of the world. And I think that was a really eye-opening event where now that we do finally have an alternative that's decentralized, that's not held within any one country's borders, they're looking at this as an opportunity to say, look, if the United States is going to bully us around by having the global reserve currency right now, and they're going to put pressure on our economics of our country if we don't do what they're looking for, we have to look for an alternative. And you're seeing it with BRICS right now, right? Russia's starting to mine Bitcoin, and they're starting to set up mining facilities in other BRICS nations as well. And that's important to note because the reason that they have to do that is because not every country has the luxury the U.S. is going to have if we try to start a strategic Bitcoin reserve where we have to buy it in the dollars we print, right? We create the currency that we're accumulating Bitcoin in because we have the luxury of being the global reserve currency. If you look at all the other nations across the globe, they don't have that same luxury. A lot of them don't have the military power. A lot of them don't have the economic power. And a lot of them surrendered their own currencies to use the US dollar. So if you're one of those nations and you see a country, even like the United States, evaluating making a change, whether it's defensive or not, right? It's a defensive move. We shouldn't pretend that it isn't right now because the other big nations have said, we're going to look at bringing this on. But if you're a smaller country that doesn't have the luxury of printing the currency that you're going to buy and accumulate the Bitcoin in, you have to move first before the giants get in.
I do like your point, though, and in that, because it's the same thing in 2008, is that if there's no punishment, consequences for poor behavior, society can't function. 2008, the government didn't let the business cycle complete. If the banks messed up, then they should have gone under, right? And point being there is what I do think we're living through today with the red wave and in the recent election is a reversion back to what's real. Is if you don't allow yourself to be governed by the immutable laws of Mother Nature, you screw humanity up. We are destined to be, that's what gold was. Gold was a good money for a long time because it's governed by the laws of Mother Nature. If you try and abstract your own universe, like your own Narnia, and govern human beings and society, abstracted too far away from Mother Nature, you screw things up. That's when people are like, I'm just going to have a Beyond Beef burger instead of a ribeye. Are you nuts? Right? That's when humans get so abstracted away. And it's like, but what I'm inspired by right now in America is a reversion back to what's real. Fuck those burgers. I'm going to eat a steak, right? At some point, people were educating me in university that the way government was spending money and going to war was a good thing, right? At some point, someone was saying, no, Bitcoin's bad. But now Trump wants to buy Bitcoin. Now people are eating ribeyes. I do think that we will see a reversion back to the means. There's a lot of cyclical behavior in this stuff. And we got too far abstracted, society did, and punished badly for not being governed by the universe, in my opinion.
Well, so let me ask you guys a question. Trump's talked about a strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, if Trump buys 500 billion in Bitcoin overnight to create a reserve, I mean, the price is going to jump, what, 20% instantly or what?
More. Yeah.
Right.
Because certain people just aren't going to sell. Like, I'm just not going to sell my Bitcoin. He's probably not. He's probably not. You know, so you have probably this really large illiquid supply where we're just not going to sell it at probably any price.
Well, I mean, Bitcoin's the only, they call it a scarcity. It's the only thing with an actual fixed supply. In financial markets, with more demand comes more supply. If everyone wants an iPhone, Apple can make as many iPhones. You can't make any more of this thing, so we've never seen price discovery in something. The only thing that's as scarce as Bitcoin is your life, is time. You're right.
Wait,
so
isn't there so I lost about 20 Bitcoin 12 years ago. I had a laptop.
Jeez.
RIP.
What are you thinking, Tim?
Well, I mean, it was worth $1 something. Like it was like $27 on my laptop.
Yeah.
And so it got destroyed in a fire. Not by fire, but by the sprinklers. Just wiped the whole thing out. And I was like, whatever. And I threw it in the garbage.
Yeah.
And I was like, pfft. But there's an attrition to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's got a cap of 21 million.
Yes.
It's currently at 19.79 million.
Have been mined.
Have been mined, right? Yep. And so and it's becoming exponentially harder. I don't think we'll ever actually reach the 21 million technically, right?
2140, I believe.
2140.
Yeah.
I think so.
But in that time period, there is going to be loss.
Yep.
I mean, the scariest thing is when people put in the wrong address.
Yep.
And gone.
Yeah.
I mean, this means simply mathematically over time, Bitcoin will be lost.
Correct. Yeah. So
what do we do?
Well, we think like I want to say to estimate 20 to 25% already lost, I believe is what estimates are. I mean, then it's even more scarce. I mean, we're saying the positive thing about it is that it is scarce and can't be recreated, and that's no other asset in humanity is like that, and so that's the good thing, not really the bad thing. If you're saying how are people going to transact because we're going to run out of it, I just don't see that being the case. And Bitcoin can be broken down, like Jack said, right? Divisibility. 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin is a Satoshi, so it goes 0.00009 zeros. So it can be broken down to pretty small parts.
As long as the monetary unit is divisible, it can scale to society. So it should be fine.
What do you guys view and think there'll be an upper limit to the value of a Bitcoin?
Well, I like. I don't remember who said this first, so I'm obviously stealing this from somebody. But they say that the U.S. dollar is they can print into infinity, which they are, right? And so, but Bitcoin is 21 million over infinity, right? So infinity, all value in planet Earth is going to go into Bitcoin, into the 21 million.
It all depends on the denominator you're using,
Yes.
right? Like right now, the predominant way that we're valuing everything is in U.S. dollars, right? It's Bitcoin, U.S. dollars. But I saw a chart the other day that I thought made a really good point in terms of how you're looking at the value of Bitcoin. And what people are looking at is they're looking at the dollar like it's stable and Bitcoin's going up, where in reality it's Bitcoin that's stable and the dollar's going down.
Exactly.
So when you start changing the way you're thinking about it, it changes how you look at the value of Bitcoin. But I think that the quote you're looking for out a lot of this was, if the dollar has no limit, or if the dollar has no limit,
The dollar has no bottom, Bitcoin has no top.
That's
I got
what it
you.
was.
Theo.
Yes,
I got you.
We got a third try. We got it. Let's go.
1, 2, 3, we got it.
So I think Bitcoin does go up in value and dollars do go down in value simultaneously.
Yes.
I think you could actually do I don't think it'd be that complicated to actually find the true stability of Bitcoin and its gains, simply like by looking at purchasing power, comparing it to perhaps houses might not.
A house is a good one. They got a chart of that. Get that one up there. That's a good one. My wife loves real estate, and I just show her this chart all the time.
I think the best, to me, the best way to measure Bitcoin is in energy terms. Because again, money is intended to be your time and energy in an abstracted form. So how can I measure in energy terms? So I think Bitcoin charted against oil is fascinating. I don't think
that's probably a good one.
I don't think people measure that enough, right? Because really what you're trying to understand is the hardness of the asset. Bitcoin's going to go up against Nigerian Naira more than dollars because it's harder to make more dollars than Naira. But Bitcoin's going to go up, more in dollar terms than penthouses because it's harder to make more penthouses than dollars, right? And you can find your denominator. Oil,
This is actually a really, I think oil is a good way to do it, as oil is a strong.
Longer time frame, like 5 years on this one.
Yeah, and so really what you...
bottom of the chart right there, yeah.
Really what you want to
do all.
Oh, boom, look at that.
Yeah. And what you really want to philosophically understand here is...
It looks much more stable when you look at it this way.
That's actually only a year and a half, I think. So it looks like it starts April of 2023.
I see. And that is all. That's all they have.
Or 2022, maybe, somewhere there.
So the point I'm making is a lot of people are like, Bitcoin's not going up, the dollar's going down. Well, it's both, actually.
Yeah.
As more nations adopt Bitcoin and start mining it, Russia, they want to build reserves of it. That demand is pulling on the existing supply, which is limited. At the same time, the dollar is miserable. It has been particularly. I mean, one of the things that gets Trump the election is inflation.
Yep,
absolutely.
So we got these salami packs. I always tell the salami story. A couple of years ago, these little packs of salamis were $7. And it's like 3 different kinds, like a red pepper one, a garlic one. And we'd buy them and load the fridge up because people love them. And you dip it and whatever, you put cheese on it. They're $13.99 now. And it's been a couple of years. I'm like, the price has doubled for this. But like you were saying, people look at the dollar like it's a stable thing, like it's the line when it is not.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they fundamentally understand that in their lives, right? We see this notion of core CPI, right? Like they keep coming up with new ways to show what inflation looks like on the dollar. And when you look at core CPI, you can go, sure, as long as you don't need food or utilities or gas in your car, right? Things everybody needs.
Well, that's been a
as part of
fake
their
metric
daily life.
forever also.
That's the point, is that
100%.
when you have a currency like the US dollar, they can play games to generate the outcome that they want to communicate to you. Anyone who goes to the grocery store knows inflation's not in the 2 to 3% range.
You want to know the sad story? The sad thing of that $5,000 from the beginning I told you about, I've never spent it. It was my savings, and I've only saved more on top of it since then. Got a different job, got more contracts.
Wait, but are you saving in dollars or saving in Bitcoin?
So now it's both.
Okay.
Now I'm very pleased to say that it's Bitcoin's about 1,000 something.
Okay.
And I was just like, it went through those cycles where.
Yep.
So I had about 20 Bitcoin again in like I can't remember what year it was.
Yeah.
It was during maybe 2012. It hit $20 at some point, and then I was like, from $5 to $20, I get $400 cash. I should use that. I can get a new phone or I can pay my rent. I did. Wish I didn't, but at the time, it's like, who really knew exactly where the top was going to be?
Yeah.
And this was Mt. Gox. This was particularly difficult to transact. It was hard to find.
Yes.
The one thing too, going back to 2011, when I was saying it was at 70 cents, people are going to look at Bitcoin now with Coinbase or Gemini or Swan Bitcoin and things like that, where they can just buy it and it's relatively easy. It was very difficult back then.
There was nothing. There was nothing.
Yeah. I had the original Bitcoin app, and I was getting Bitcoin from the Bitcoin faucet. Do you guys remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Man, was it 0.05 Bitcoin for free?
Yeah.
And you just click the button. It's like, it was worth nothing back then. But I had that 5,000 in savings that I said maybe I'll buy Bitcoin with. Never spent. And guess what that is worth today? It's worth probably a third of where it was at the time when I had it. So I have just lost the majority of the value of that savings. And if I had bought Bitcoin with it, I'd be worth like $400 million.
Well, what's interesting is the value of it today in what? In Bitcoin terms, it's gotten demolished. It could have been, hundreds of thousands of Bitcoins to now it's like 0.000. If in housing terms, in dollar terms, so what you realize is measuring inflation is on a per unit basis, right? Is like if CPI is measured at 3%, but housing is 20% year over year, you got to be getting a 21% raise every single year just to be making progress to be a homeowner, right? So
I maybe a good metric isn't housing or oil, but $5,000 can only get you so far. $400 million, that can buy you like 3 whole senators.
That's funny. The other one that I like, the other chart I like showing people because they say, one of the bigger, it's too volatile, right? If you look at, say, the 200-week moving average, it's up only, right? And so you don't get into Bitcoin for this, quick number go up. You get into it because you understand it and you want a long-term hold. And if you look at the 200-week moving average, it's up only.
Yeah, but people got to grow up, man, with the whole scared of volatility. No, I'm serious. When you go to the doctor, and they're checking your heart and your heart looks like a flat line, what does that mean?
What if it's slightly going up?
That means you're dead. That means you're dead. So volatility is life, right? Like the central banks have tried to suck volatility out of this world and price control everything. Volatility is life. If you want to be a man and you want to own the future of this world, then own something that's got life in it. Don't be a bitch. Sorry.
But you were completely correct. And the issue is the stability of the dollar is an illusion to the average person.
Yes.
Correct.
They look at their bank account and they see $100 and like, I have $100. They're not tracking the price of everything else. Because if they were, they'd be like, the dollar's going like this, like crazy.
Yeah.
The fact that overnight oil could jump 30% or whatever, and then all of a sudden all your prices are skyrocketing. We end up seeing that in the past 4 years with inflation. The cost of goods became erratic. They spiked. And everybody, they interview these people on the streets and they're like, I can't afford eggs right now.
Yes.
That's because your dollar is volatile and erratic. Eggs are eggs. The labor required to make an egg stays the same the whole time. In fact, an egg is substantially more stable than a dollar. So I got, but it is true. I got chickens outside. And the chickens, we can feed them only bugs if we wanted. We can do a total natural chicken farm. You'll get less eggs. But then you put the wood in the ground. In the morning, you lift up, the bugs run around, the chickens eat them all. The chickens will also eat grass, and they'll find food. And then that egg emerges. And I have an egg. I know how much labor I need to get that egg. That egg is stable. The dollar is not. You go to the grocery store and eggs cost 20% more. It's because your dollar has become worth less. The chicken egg is the same thing as it always was. Yeah. Same calories, same bird, same everything.
Hey, I want to circle back to your the strategic Bitcoin reserve that you brought up. We got distracted. Who knows what happened?
We're having fun.
We are having fun. I thought RFK actually laid out a better one. So the Trump and RFK both spoke at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville this past July. And Trump, he's Trump, and he laid out, he said a lot of positive, big words, and made people feel good. But RFK was the one that really clearly laid it out, and hopefully that's the one they follow. And his plan was to, I believe, get 1 million Bitcoin over a 5-year period, 200,000 per year. And the thing that Michael Saylor just brought up was, what if we started selling our gold in order to buy Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin is essentially gold 2.0. And I actually loved it. I thought, Let's get it faster. Let's sell some gold. And then, honestly, if you're the first country who does it, you kind of screw all the other countries
Well,
out of the gold.
El Salvador, aren't they doing this?
Well, they're going to start mining.
Right. But so they discovered like $1 trillion in untapped gold
Someone said
reserve
three.
mines,
Three.
$3 trillion. And then someone tweeted like, "What would El Salvador? What could they possibly do with this gold?" And then I think Nayib Bukele posted a picture of like a Bitcoin price tracker, like they're going to start converting to Bitcoin.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, so first of all, Senator Lummis of Wyoming, shout out Senator Lummis, unbelievable Bitcoin advocate, tremendous. That's her bill, by the way. The Bitcoin Act is that you're going to take the excess reserves from the Fed banks, which is in gold, and you're going to build a Bitcoin position with that. And it's 1 million Bitcoin is the target. I also know Trump is looking at a day one executive order. There's like
Sorry. Day one executive order for a Bitcoin reserve for the United States?
Yeah, but so I know that there's people looking at the Dollar Stabilization Act. Is it gives the president wide discrepancy to protect the dollar, and there's potential to use a day one executive order to purchase Bitcoin. It wouldn't be at the size and scale of 1 million coins, but it would be a significant position, and it'd be a message that the United States, listen, here's what I think isn't talked about enough about the strategic reserve, is it's the first, I think it's one of the biggest economic announcements if it happens in American history, but it's the first positive one. Why is no one talking about that? The U.S. made a really big economic announcement in 1933. What was it? We're taking all your property, right? We're confiscating your stuff. Yep. They made a big one in 1971. What was it? We're divorcing ourselves from the gold standard, divorcing ourselves from the immutable laws of Mother Nature. We're printing money. They made a big one in 2008. What was it? We're bailing out all the bad actors. We're not letting consequences follow through. We're not letting the business cycle finish. If Trump makes one, it's a positive one. For the first time ever, it's not defensive. It's not reactionary. It's pro-technology, pro-growth. Governments own 2% of the supply of this thing. Who owns the rest? The public. It's something that acts in the best interest of the people. So to me, if he does an executive order on day one, no matter the size, the magnitude of a positive economic announcement out of this country for the first time in 100 years that acts in the best interest of the public, where the public owns it. The public was first before Wall Street, right? Mm-hmm. Like, why is no one talking about that? They call him what, a terrorist instead or whatever, but that's, to me, that's the message.
Well, and it's a great point.
It's inspiring.
Yeah.
With the market cap right now at 2.12 trillion, if Donald Trump signs an executive order and buys a substantial amount, between 100 and 500 billion dollars, I think that could be somewhere in north of or somewhere around 4 or 5 million Bitcoin. It's going to make millionaires overnight.
Well, I don't know if he'd be able to buy that many Bitcoin because, like I said, there's a lot of people who just aren't going to sell. And so, yeah, you're going to have to the price. I mean, I might sell, I don't know, if it gets to 500,000, I might sell a Bitcoin or something, but I have no need to sell any. You
don't need to sell.
Then.
Yeah.
So,
no, but even then, you can sell when you need to buy something.
Exactly.
Well, and what are you selling into?
Yeah.
Like you better have a plan for it.
Yes.
Because if your plan is to just go back to the system that we're trying to exit, right? Yeah. I mean,
well, obviously, I would never sell all of my. So to this point, I've never sold any of my Bitcoin, zero. And then moving forward, it's like, again, what are you going to exit into? You better have a plan for it. And I would never ever sell all of my Bitcoin. That's totally insane, right? It's just better. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a lot of people like me, or say like a Michael Saylor or an ETF, like they're just not going to sell. So I don't know what the price. If Trump wants to buy that much, I don't know what the price would go to, but it's going to be something.
Insane.
It's going to be totally insane.
I think we
millionaires overnight.
250,000 to $1 million per Bitcoin within calendar year 25 has been my prediction for.
Wait, 250 million?
250,000 to 1 million in this range. And it's highly dependent. Like Trump's executive order purchase, if it happens, wouldn't be at the size and scale of 1 million Bitcoin. He wouldn't be allowed to do that, but it'd still be significant. I think Bitcoin's got at least a 3 to 10x in it from here over the next 12 months.
I agree. I think Max Kaiser raised his target to 2.2 million.
Shout out Max.
But Max is always on the higher end.
He's a little hyperbolic, certainly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But I think what people need to consider is El Salvador. Mm-hmm. Here's what's really fascinating about El Salvador. Nayib Bukele gets in, and he turns El Salvador into a first world nation of wealth and prosperity. Crime is gone.
Yes.
They had this big celebration recently. They opened the library. Bitcoin hitting 100,000. He's posting the National Reserve and how much money they've made. Yeah. And I was playing poker over at National Harbor in D.C. Mm-hmm. Guy to my left was from El Salvador. And I forgot how the conversation came up, but he goes, we're actually going back home. Someone asked him, like, where you from? And he's like, El Salvador. He's like, but actually, we're leaving. We moved here to get away from the crime, but it's so nice and now we want to go home. And I was like, whoa. I mean, that's massive.
Yeah.
You got the Syrian civil war is over, I guess. They've removed this, probably not, but Assad's out. And all these Syrians are like, nah, we're sticking around where we are in UK and Ireland. El Salvador just won them all back. El Salvador, this is the beginning of a nation proving that this is a path towards wealth and prosperity.
Absolutely.
But what I find fascinating is the hatred and resistance from the establishment, how they insulted and attacked Nayib Bukele as he was doing this. And now Trump is in a similar position ideologically where Nayib is. Arrest the gangs, shut down the cartels, Bitcoin, yes. We're going to be looking at a boon similarly, but we're exponentially larger than they are. So, when other nations see the same thing, $1 million is not out of the question.
Did you? I was at the time. I was the kid that did that with El Salvador. So I was attacked by the media as well. I was the one that worked with them on that and announced it with them. So first of all, shout out. I was at a sushi restaurant in El Salvador, and Bukele's brother DM'd me on Twitter. That's how that whole thing went down. They gave me 24 hours latitude, longitude to meet the government. And at the time, it was like the most dangerous country in the world. And I texted my dad. I was like, man, if this is how I go out, I love you. It'd make for a good documentary. But I think you're right. I know Trump misspoke about Bukele actually a few times. In his running, but I think you're right, and they're on good terms. And I think El Salvador is a smaller scale of what we'll see in America, hopefully.
Yes.
Hopefully.
But it's when these other nations look at what El Salvador did and then say, I want that. Yeah. But let me throw in the greed factor real quick. There's going to be some crackpot warlord who's like, why don't I have $100 million? Buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that Bitcoin is it's money, so people can do whatever they want with it. But, in the El Salvador thing, Bitcoin leads you down a lot of funny paths. And I started reading like Alex Gladstein. Do you guys know who that is? Like,
HRF.
HRF. And then, kind of like with the IMF and the World Bank, they propose that they're doing good, but they really essentially just keep all these people under their thumb. And then, I don't want to make any statements for sure, but if you read some books, you learn some things, and it seems like and this is why like Bukele to me I can't believe they haven't assassinated him yet, because the United States government in some way, shape, or form has probably assassinated many other Central and South American dictators who don't do what they want over the course of years. And so if you can buy Bitcoin and get freedom from the IMF and the World Bank and all the things that they force you to do, that's a really, really powerful thing. So I can't believe there has been not one other country who has followed his lead to this point.
El Salvador has gotten it's a lot of credit for tough on crime. This was when I met him. Tough on crime, clean, technology support, forward thinking. They want new business entrepreneurs and hard money in Bitcoin. That was the blueprint executed to a T. Nobody's talking about the IMF stuff though, and the reason I think it's relevant to America is that's a country that climbed out of debt. And that's what Trump's talking about is we've got deficits. How can we make progress?
Huge deficits.
But you've watched a country that was in a perpetual indebted relationship that was killing them and suffocating them, like we're living through in America, that was able to climb out of it through Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I don't know why no one is drawing that narrative to America. We're obviously a larger scale, but why can't we do the same?
Well, Trump loves winners, right? And Bukele is becoming a very public winner right now. He's totally transformed the economic standing of El Salvador. He's brought all this new technology investment into El Salvador, right? They're making it a very open country for people who want to come and build. They're making it hope, right? They're making it hope for the world. And he's going to become a very big marketing tool for the rest of the world, right? Yes. You can't ignore that type of success because they were, what were they, murder capital of the world before he started down this?
One of them.
One of them.
Depending on the metric you use, there's more murders in Venezuela, but not per capita. Honduras is the highest per capita, and El Salvador was like up right next to them.
Yeah. And then to Jack's point, or I can't remember who made the point, but when someone wants to now go home to El Salvador from wherever they're at, that's a big shift because people were only leaving and they were trying to come to the United States and send money back. And that money was getting captured by Western Union on the way in the door. They were bleeding all that value out, wasn't getting home to where they thought it was going to be. Just that simple shift of saying, we're going to embrace Bitcoin. We're not going to attack Bitcoin and we're going to support the growth of Bitcoin within our borders. has been such a huge transformation for that country that I don't think it's going to be able to be ignored.
I mean, this is historic dream come true level stuff. Look at this video. This is just the celebration they're doing. The things they've constructed, the crime reduction.
Yeah.
Wow.
Incredible.
Yeah, you know the other thing that we haven't brought up yet in this conversation, and actually I was talking to my daughter about it on the way over here, but high time preference versus low time preference behavior. And when you really get into Bitcoin, you start going deep down the rabbit hole. I feel like it changes the way you think about a lot of things. So in a high time preference country where your money's inflating at an insane rate, so you know what was Argentina, but they're turning that around. Venezuela.
Yes, no debt anymore.
No debt. Totally crazy. But so on this high, if you get your paycheck on Friday and by the next Friday your money is devalued, there's absolutely no point in saving, because why would you ever plan for the future? Because your money is essentially going to go to zero. So there's no use in trying to save and plan for the future. So you have this insanely high time preference behavior, and that's really bad, right? And if you have money which is good and strong and solid, you're going to have low time preference behavior, which means I know the money I earn today in 2024 is going to be worth, as much or more 10 years down the road. And so I can plan for my future. I can save. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And so it kind of like flips the way you think about things if you have good hard money.
Well, when
You can't save dollars.
when you
can't save
go
'em.
when you go back to money 101, just monetary theory, and money is the market good that you don't consume and you need to save it. The intention of money is to be able to place a premium on tomorrow. It's our ability to value the future. And so there's a direct correlation to the harder the money, the better human flourishing in society, because we're able to coordinate and place a premium on tomorrow. And so that's fundamentally, and that's what Ben's talking about, is low high time preference. If your money's shit, then tomorrow's shit. If your money's hard and good, then tomorrow could be great. And your ability to have confidence in that, because everyone's preference is now. You want $10 million now or $10 million in 10 years? Well, I'll take it now. But our ability to place premiums on tomorrow and the future, and not go to the beach every day, not spend everything we have right now on bottle service and Louis Vuitton bags. Seriously, I mean that's what you're talking about. 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
So let me pull this up real quick. This is a story from 2021. Treasure hunter finds lost box of $46,000 cash in house attic. Boy, is he happy. Look at that smile on his face. He found $46,000. You see, back in the 1960s, his family bought the house. Someone who lived there in the 1950s had stored that $46,000 in cash under the floorboards in the attic to keep it safe. And this is the sad reality of the United States and the U.S. dollar.
Uh-oh.
You see how happy he is? How much happier do you think he would be if he found $500,000 in the attic?
Ooh.
If that was stored as gold, or, they don't have Bitcoin back in 1950. But if it was stored in something of true value, not a U.S. dollar, it's lost around 90% of its value. This guy's so excited to find $46,000, and the government's laughing all the way to the bank.
Yep.
Your buying power is gone.
Yeah.
You could have bought several houses back then were relatively cheap.
Yeah.
That's going to buy you 2 houses today. $46,000 could have bought you 3 or 4 or more.
Yeah.
Imagine if they bought real estate and handed it down to their kids.
That's what, we talk about the high time preference and low time preference behavior. And, you said people think of the dollar as a stable thing. And I think maybe they do, like if they were speaking.
Oh, that was Ben.
I thought you. Maybe
I
both of you.
Yeah, I said he was right. That's how
I think of it. And but I think subconsciously or inherently they almost know, because every friend I have, I've only convinced a few to buy Bitcoin. They're stubborn. It's unfortunate. But every friend I have who makes any kind of money knows that they don't hold cash in the bank. It's not like they just get their money and they hold their money. And if money was good and money was hard, I don't have to have a second job. I can just get my money, I save it, and then 10 years it's worth the same amount and I can spend it. But every single friend I know has to say, oh, do I want to invest in extra real estate, or do I want to invest in the stock market, or where do I invest my money? Because they know subconsciously that they have to invest in something in order for their money to keep up with inflation so it doesn't go away. And that's kind of like, that's another one where it's like, I wish we didn't have to do that. I wish we just had good money and we didn't have to worry about it devaluing.
Well, debasing the currency is probably the cruelest thing you can do to society. And you can, what human level KPI do you care about to measure how society's doing? Obesity rates going up, cancer rates going up, divorce rates going up, child per woman crashing. At one point, life expectancy was crashing. Recently, like 2022, I haven't gotten an updated statistic. But if you create a society where, to Ben's point, you're supposed to be a doctor, you're supposed to be an engineer, not 50% doctor, 50% expert on central bank Japanese monetary policy and your Robinhood account. Seriously, and people are getting unhealthy because they're compromising on the quality of their food because they can't afford it. You're eating seed oils, you're eating trash, right? And so it's the worst thing you can do to a civilization is you're basically sucking the life out of it by sucking the purchasing power, the monetary good out of the people. It's evil.
And you're training them to be borrowers, to go deeper down that hole, right? People are going into deep debt to fund the lifestyle because the money's not worth it. They can't get ahead. They can't save. They can't do anything.
No, but they trap you.
But you can get points for a credit card.
They trap you into the student loans. And listen, don't judge me. I invested in a company and not Bitcoin. It wasn't that much money. But this, one of my friends who works at a bank said, hey, there's this young kid and we can't give him a loan. Maybe you should talk to him. And this kid wanted a $40,000 loan. I didn't invest all of the 40, but he wanted a $40,000 loan for his ketchup business. He already had POs for shout out ketchup, please. It's really great. It's healthier than regular ketchup. Also, he wanted $40,000. He already had purchase orders from Hy-Vee. He had like a lot of everything good. They would give him $200,000 in student loans, but they wouldn't give him a $40,000 business loan. It's like, holy shit, but he's already got revenue. He's already got purchase orders. And you guys won't give him $40,000, but you'll give him $200,000 in student debt? Like, that's brainwashing.
You'll give him the one he's saddled with forever.
Forever.
Right? The one
you can't
you
get
can
rid
never
of it.
discharge.
It's totally
They're
insane.
willing to give you that one. And that is, to Jack's point, that's cruel, right? Because you're putting people in a deficit position when they're starting out their lives. I don't think people understand
how bad the deficit
big
is.
Of an advantage it is to launch your life without debt.
Yes.
Right? It puts you in such a place of strength where you can actually spend the time to think about what are the assets I should be owning to continue my success forward. How do I build on the advantage I had early in life? Absolutely. But most people don't have that advantage.
Because they're brainwashed to go to college.
Because that's the model. That's what their parents did. That's what they see on TV. The credit card companies, well, you can get a bunch of points if you get a credit card with us, even if you don't really qualify to be able to pay it back.
Again, I think it's just this divorce from reality where society, we get so abstracted away from what's real. On what planet, in first principle thinking, did you think you were going to take out a $200,000 loan to get a liberal arts degree? No, I'm being serious, but here's the reality is if things that you need in your life are getting 10% more expensive year over year, you have to be getting an 11% raise every single year or you're working backwards. What's working backwards? Draw the picture for me, Jack. Okay, that means I'm not eating ribeyes, I'm eating McDonald's. That means I'm not having 5 kids, I'm maybe having 1. That means I'm not buying a house, I'm renting an apartment. That means when you print money, assets inflate, right? Bitcoin, housing. So those that own the assets, the boomer class, has all the money, all the housing. Who do you think is going to compete better in a housing bid war? The guy that's worked 50 years at 60 years old or the guy that's worked 5 months that's a fresh college grad? Yeah. So you've got serious civil unrest, mentally ill and physically ill population of the youth. They're like now don't know what gender they are. It's sick kids that don't own assets, that are in perpetual debt, that are compromising on their profession and their quality of life because they're running a rat race. They're running on a treadmill. They can't make any real progress. Yes. And and then you get the civil unrest where everyone's mad at each other. No one can disagree. It's the most un-American America has ever felt. And I do think that, I think if we fix the money, fix the world is a common saying in Bitcoin. I think if we can fix the money, we can solve at least half of the biggest problems we face today. I fundamentally believe that.
Yeah. Well,
let me. I'm sorry. I just finish your point. I don't want to interrupt you.
I was going to say, look at the depression and anxiety rates that have started to pop up in the last decade or two, right? I mean, when people feel hopeless, and that's the position a lot of people are finding themselves in, they're starting to feel hopeless, like there's no way out. That's when you're going to start seeing the massive rise in that.
Yeah.
And so the more education that can get out there to let people know that you have an alternative now, you don't have to be stuck in that system, that's a huge net positive for the world. And I do think that the youth, I'm starting to see them get really involved, right? And I think a lot of them are probably following Jack because he's electric. Yeah. But that education is going to pay dividends for their entire life if they learn it early. Most people wait till it's way too late and they're under the $200,000 of student loan debt and they have to be in a job that they hate because they have no other alternative. They have to have the paycheck. They're starting to see a way out, and I think getting that message out is one of the most important things we can do.
So the International Monetary Fund, the SWIFT payment system, right? The weapon that is used by petrodollar, Western, NATO, et cetera. You know, we're going to sanction you. We're going to cut you off from the credit card transactions and things like this. So I'm jumping back because I pulled up the wiki on El Salvador, which I find absolutely fascinating. There's a section on presidency of Nayib Bukele, and it says, it's fascinating to read this because if you're a layman who pulls up Wikipedia, I feel bad for you because Wikipedia is trash. But this is what a lot of people are turning to, and I think it proves the point of the machine being outraged, upset. It says in January of 2022, the IMF urged El Salvador to reverse its decision to make cryptocurrency legal tender. Bitcoin had rapidly lost about half its value, meaning economic difficulties. And as of May 2022, the government bonds trading at 40% of their original value. The prospect of looming sovereign default. Bukele announced back in January 2022 plans to build Bitcoin City at the base of a volcano in El Salvador. Nowhere do they write here that Bitcoin has exploded in value and he's made a massive gain. They do go on to mention near the bottom. What's fascinating is it then goes on to say his fight against criminal gangs made it some of the highest incarceration rates in the world, with crackdowns resulting in hundreds of deaths, and international human rights organizations declaring it the worst abuse of human rights since the Civil War. And then it says he won the election with 83% in 2024.
Yep.
Because they're not telling you the full picture that Bitcoin exploded. It's not just about Bitcoin. It's about real transformation, the reduction in crime, becoming one of the safest countries in the world now, the safest in Central America. I think safer than America now, and extremely wealthy. Now, don't get me wrong. El Salvador's GDP per capita is much lower than the United States. I mean, you'd be crazy to think that it wasn't the case. But it's jumped up substantially, $5,607 GDP per capita, 108th in the world. It has rapidly improved as a nation. The machine, like the IMF, is the debt machine. So as you're talking about getting young kids in student loan debt, the way this machine works is they go to your developing nation and say, if you want a McDonald's and you want to be wealthy, take a loan from us. And they know that loan will never be paid back.
They put these insane terms on it.
You'll be in debt forever as a nation. And they're telling you to sign your sovereignty over to us.
Yes.
And the people who run these countries are like, well, I'll be rich.
And then they default on it, and then they say, well, give us some of your mineral rights or something like that. And then they default on it again, and they say, give us some more. And then, and then one guy comes in and says, we don't want to do this anymore. And then,
yep. And then there's an invasion because he had weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
I know I'm repeating myself, but this reminds me of the Beyond Beef burger to the ribeye. It's a reversion.
Did you ever eat one of those? I've never eaten
No,
one.
no.
Okay.
It doesn't have it has like a burger. I mean, it's salty food. I don't know if this,
It's just, it's not real. Like when I went to El Salvador and I worked with the government on the Bitcoin stuff, I was so excited. I was like, guys, you won't get it. They're focused on clean streets, no crime, innovation, growth, Bitcoin, and the media crushed me for it. There's, I was getting thrashed, crushed. The IMF reached out to me. I presented to the IMF, World Bank, IMF, on my ass. And it was, again, at the time when I was sitting as a kid in my mid-20s, I was like, what? This doesn't make any sense to me. What's wrong with no crime? What's wrong with being clean? Like, it just wasn't computing in my brain. But now, outside of, I guess, this Wikipedia page, Bukele's a rock star, right? Yeah. Elon Musk is like, man, this guy's a great leader. And I feel inspired. There's a lot of optimism where I think the world is like, wait a second, no Beyond Beef burger, ribeye. And like, and that example abstracted into wherever, El Salvador for me is living through that as well.
Well, I mean, to what you're saying is, and I think this is probably what won Trump the election the first time, and then this election probably more, is that people are just so sick of being lied to, and we know we're being lied to in a lot of cases. We know, and that goes into like the Cantillon effect, and who's ever closest to the money printer is the one that's benefiting the most from the money printer. And then the government has co-opted all these organizations, media and otherwise, pharmaceutical, et cetera, to kind of like push this narrative. And regular people can see we're being lied to, and we didn't like it. So, that was kind of this uprising that you're talking about, I think.
Yeah, lies don't scale, right? Like, Mother Nature's undefeated with time.
I think one thing that we can count on, though, is that Trump is a legacy guy, right? One, he loves winners. And you're seeing a guy like Bukele out there whose approval rating just continues to rocket through the roof. And they've brought themselves into the serious position of independence for their own nation. And I think that Trump looks at the United States and he can kind of view this as his opportunity to set us on a new trajectory where we've got a new path, and he can be the guy that made that change. And I think he's right. I think he can be the guy to make that change. And it is a bold move to do, And the strategic reserve is one of the steps along the way. But when you look at all the former reserve assets of the world, they all fell at some point.
Yes.
So the question becomes, when you are the reserve asset of the world, is are you going to take the steps to prevent that from happening? Are you going to fight and pretend that this decentralized asset isn't happening in the world? Because it's not just a U.S. thing. You can't just shut it down in the U.S. and it goes away. That's not real.
It doesn't go away.
So do you look at that and do you say, maybe there's an opportunity for us to integrate with this, and maybe the U.S. dollar then still continues to be the transactional currency across the globe, and it might even strengthen its position, but we're going to start backing ourselves with the new emerging assets that's decentralized from all countries, right? And we're going to participate in that too. And I think he's got a chance to change the course of history.
I mean, that's probably Trump's biggest challenge going into this term is the debt is so insane. And we're about to go into this debt spiral where, I mean, interest on debt payments, I think this year is 1.3 trillion or 1.4 trillion. I mean, if it gets much worse, there's no coming out of it. Like, it's going to go to zero eventually.
We're reaching the bad part of escape velocity, right? We're going to reach
almost there.
escape
It's
velocity.
almost there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gee. Oh, no, not that. Well, I think they said it was 360 billion in the last 2 months only of debt added to the.
Well, look at the U.S. federal debt to GDP ratio. In the 1960s, in 1960 it was 52. In 1980 it was 34. In 2000 it was 54. Today is 123%. We are generating more debt than actual product.
Yes.
That's insane.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is literally his biggest challenge to figure out. And, you know, I know Elon and Vivek are going to do the Doge, and hopefully that works. And they've been watching what's been happening in
That
Argentina.
doesn't stand a chance.
You don't think so?
There's not enough to cut. All the expenses are things like medical, social security, defense spending. You could fire everyone at the government. It's a rounding error of our expenditures. I don't think that that's going to make a real dent. I mean, maybe
Really?
I mean, just mathematically, there's not enough they can, unless they're going to remove our ability to defend ourselves. Social Security's out the window.
Well, Social Security, that you said the dollar's a Ponzi. Social Security is like the biggest Ponzi.
Well, it's all Ponzi.
Yes.
I think this debt to GDP is a great way for people to understand why America should own Bitcoin. Because what does debt to GDP tell you? It's how much have we borrowed from our future versus the growth that we're producing to pay it back. Okay, so what's America missing? Growth, real growth. And when I say things like child per woman is down, just so everyone knows, you can't print 18-year-olds. So if we're not producing enough humans, we can't be growing the economy. If the amount of humans coming out of vaginas is going down, we're in serious trouble. No, I'm serious with debt to GDP. And so how do you...
They're gonna invite 60 million non-citizens to flood the country at the southern border.
100%, and that causes problems. So how do you buy growth? Well, what if I told you there was a thing that on average is growing 65% year over year over the last 10 years? It's the best performing thing in the history of mankind, and you can just buy it off the shelf. It's like, oh, I'll take a double cheeseburger, Coke Zero. Oh, and this thing that's growing so fast that if we lean into it, we could pay off our debt in the next 25 years. That's why the government would be interested. For those at home, it's like pretty simple. We have a lot of debt. We have no growth. How do you buy growth? You immigrants, whatever, but like you just buy it. Buy Bitcoin.
What do you guys? So we had this story break from Google just a couple days ago. Willow, the state-of-the-art quantum chip that they say was able to handle a benchmark computation that would take 10 septillion years. It handled it in less than 5 minutes. And the concern is with the rapid development of quantum computing, encryption as we know it will be completely dismantled. So to simplify it for everybody, the way Bitcoin works is there's a private and public key. It's basically you get access to a thing, and then you have an encrypted password that can't be broken that ensures only you have access to those specific Bitcoin or fractions of. A quantum computer can basically find the password instantly and then unravel the whole thing, get access to anybody's Bitcoin, just take it all.
Yeah.
What's going to stop that from happening?
Well, for the public, first of all, this is not nearly strong enough to make a dent in Bitcoin. And for the general public as well, cryptography and using public-private key pairs, that's what runs the internet. That's what secures your bank account. That's what runs the universe and the
Quantum
world.
computing destroys the world.
Right. But from an engineering standpoint, before being a CEO in a suit, I was an engineer. That was my initial contributions to Bitcoin. And the technical community is aware of this. And there's going to be a transition probably over the next decade or so onto different cryptographic curves. So this will be addressed and solved. This story came out and everyone was like, "Oh, is Bitcoin going to go zero?" No, absolutely
They say that every
not.
time there's a breakthrough in crypto,
Not a risk at all, and it's a known technical barrier that everyone in the world, not just Bitcoin. I mean, the first thing is that all the money in your Chase account would disappear before people started attacking Bitcoin. So, not a concern.
It is pretty wild. The article says it lends credence to the notion that quantum computation occurs in many parallel universes, in line with the idea that we live in a multiverse. That's like the craziest thing you could write, but I don't know. I'm not a quantum computer guy, so whatever, or a physicist.
I also think that people need to recognize that quantum and classical technology systems don't necessarily mesh well together, right? So people think that quantum is just like a standard computer, but super powerful.
But I think this is a good time to reference that Bitcoin is technology, which for the first time we have a money that can adapt and get better. Like what I think fascinating point is Bitcoin's going to get better for as long as I'm alive and then long after I'm dead. Gold, like once gold stopped working, it's a rock. But Bitcoin, we can improve it, right? And that's what I don't think Bitcoin can evolve, which is totally different than any other commodity you've ever owned, right? Like corn.
So let's go the other direction on this one. Let's go full conspiracy. Do you guys know the globalist conspiracy theory about Bitcoin? I'd imagine.
Uh-oh.
So
The CIA started it or what?
So Satoshi Nakamoto literally translates to Intelligence Central Hub or something.
Really?
Yeah. So it was a viral meme that let me see if I can pull it up. I tweeted it, and I can let's see if I can find it. What do we have? The CIA invented Bitcoin. Here we go.
Yes, I've heard that one.
So what does Satoshi mean in Japanese? So for those who don't know, Satoshi Nakamoto is the inventor of Bitcoin.
Yes.
In Japanese, Satoshi means wise or intelligent. What does Nakamoto mean? Naka means middle or center, and moto means origin or base. So it means intelligent, center, base. Central origin or root of the center. So central. And then, of course, we flip the names. Satoshi Nakamoto, we would say that Nakamoto Satoshi in the United States, but they go by last name first. So that would mean central origin of intelligence. The Central Intelligence Agency. Something like that. But so here's the idea. In the late 2000s, you had this conversation about the Amero. People were saying, look, Europe is doing the euro. They're creating a centralized currency for the entire bloc. They want to create one in the United States that U.S., Canada, and Mexico would all use, the Amero. Never happened. There were leaked images claiming this was what it was going to look like, and it would cause problems for the U.S. because we're the top. And so it's going to pull us down and lift them up. Never happened. You had a bunch of people who are relatively pro-America, anti-government, conspiracy theorists, etc. So the idea goes, you're the IMF or the Davos group or whatever, and you're sitting there being like, these people they're not going to let us just do this. They're going to protest. There's going to be revolt. It's going to be messy. How do we trick them into doing it? And so they create a publicly trackable, easily transferable system of value, Bitcoin.
Yep.
Nobody really knows who made it. They then seed it to the anti-government type saying, this gets you out of the system. Now you're outside of the government. And who adopts it? A bunch of libertarian weirdos people buying drugs, anarcho-capitalists. Then you've got the anti-government types proselytizing for your new global currency and becoming wealthy doing it. And so then everyone wants to start adopting it. But what do you end up with? Any standard algorithm, moderately weak AI, can track the entire ledger of Bitcoin and figure out who you are, what you're buying, and what and where that money is going. So with the public ledger, Bitcoin itself is a massive surveillance network of everything you'd purchase. Cash, you can buy a lot of things in cash and transfer that value the government can't track.
Yeah.
And so as the conspiracy goes to simplify, powerful international interests wanted to create a global currency or global trade of value to replace the petrodollar. They needed to get, in order to get ubiquity or to get adoption, you have to give it to make your opponents believe it's their path to victory and play the heel. All of these anarcho-capitalists adopt it. It becomes mainstream. And now a simple example is when I think it was Andrew Arnheimer fled the country to the United States and went to Ukraine and was posting on like a Stormfront or whatever, Daily Storm, or whatever that website was. Journalists knew he had received $1 million in Bitcoin because the public ledger tracks where everything is going. a computer can do it way better. Now they can simply ask ChatGPT if it's plugged in, show me the entire transaction history of John Smith, and it'll show everything they've ever done in Bitcoin, and then it can map out probably what it expects them to buy. So what do you guys think?
I think there are ways to use Bitcoin privately. I've done it. You use the Lightning Network, super private. It's advanced. It's not easy. It's not for everyone. But the notion that Bitcoin was designed to trace and track everybody, I say it here first, bullshit. Not true at all, technically. I think the most important point here is it doesn't matter who created it. Like, I'm still going to store my time, energy, effort, labor, work, and future in it because
It's better.
What?
Because it's better.
Because it's better. Because it's better. Like, if someone were to say, that guy created it, but he committed a crime to whatever, shake his hand. Thank you. I appreciate it. And whatever your morals and opinions and principles are, I don't give a shit. Doesn't matter. So the technology stands on its own. It can compete against anything. It's the best thing to own, period, for yourself. And so it just doesn't matter.
It still is permissionless, and I still can't confiscate it. So you still have those things. And you think if the CIA made it, they'd have some backdoor to confiscate it, and that hasn't happened in 15 years.
No, I don't think it would undermine it. If they're trying to build something and get it mass adoption, they wouldn't undermine themselves, even if they were. So it certainly does create some kind of freeing principle for sure. It is traceable. Like a computer can track addresses and see where coins are going.
Yeah, there's ways to use it that imply certain things. But listen, I mean, no, we don't ask what was the intent of the car. Was it to drive over and hit a chick in the head? Who cares? I use it for what I need to use it for now. It's a tool, so it doesn't matter. And by the way, Ben, the code's open source. Yes. So if there is a backdoor, humanity hasn't found it. And so if you are short Bitcoin because you think it's compromised, you are short humanity. The story of humanity is engineering a better world. So if you believe in that, then there's nothing to worry about.
So Satoshi Nakamoto has, 1 million Bitcoin?
1.1, I think.
1.1?
In theory.
It's never moved. It's presumed to be that these original, allotment or whatever is Satoshi's because it's never moved or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you guys think we will ever find out?
It's not an initial allotment like some of these ICOs where they give,
right.
Like the Hawk Tua coin where they gave all these people a bunch of coins. There was zero at the beginning, and then that wallet mined in order to earn those coins.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, do you think we're ever going to find out who it actually was?
I say no at this point.
No.
I think whoever it actually is probably like, I don't want to die.
Mm-hmm.
Or
he's already rich.
Yeah.
Like anybody who's done something like this, I would imagine Satoshi probably had other coins as well that weren't as easily noticeable and doesn't need to move 1.1 million. But also, I'll just put it this way. If it were me, I wouldn't just have 1.1 million. There'd probably be smaller bits and pieces there. I would have held on to other wallets, probably have made money elsewhere. Someone smart enough to do this with this vision probably is already successful and wealthy in other ways. But at this point, if you were to make a move on those coins, they'd find you and your life would be in danger.
Yeah.
Everyone in the world is going to be coming at you. So it's funny when these guys come out and go, I'm Satoshi. It's like, no, you're not.
Well, first of all, Satoshi leaving, and we can comfortably say now based on emails that have been shown in court, he leaving is the best thing that's ever happened to the project, in my opinion. Tremendously important to its independence. Also, setting the tone for the level of humility and lack of ego. I always say Bitcoin's an ego test. And those that value and prioritize ego have the toughest time adopting it. What type of man? You don't want to be on the Time cover. You don't want to get the hottest chicks at the dance. You don't want to have the biggest yacht. No, seriously, what a humanitarian act to say, this is my gift to our species and walk away. Yeah. That is the most profound act of a
create
human.
The best money ever, and money is something human beings use on it every single day.
And that set the tone, I think, for the level of humility. When you adopt this thing, you're not bigger than this thing. You're one with this thing. It's equal rights. It's rules with no rulers. And I do think those that think they're late to Bitcoin is ego. Late to who? Oh, you're comparing yourself to your friend. You're comparing yourself to your colleague, to your college roommate. It's about ego. And he set that tone by saying, this isn't about me. I'm walking away for the importance of what good money means to the world. I've never, draw me a comparison in human history that has done such an act. I don't know of anything remotely close.
It's the most selfless thing that somebody could do to invent something and to give up the control, right? Once Satoshi walked away, they released Bitcoin to the world, and the world gets to now decide what to do with Bitcoin. He created this really powerful network, this monetary network, And now that it's out there and it's open for everybody, everyone's getting to choose how they're going to use that and integrate that into their life. And the lack of ego to release something like that is important. But I do think, to the conspiracy points here, you're going to get a lot of that from people who either don't understand it or are incentivized for it not to succeed, right? There's going to be all these stories that come up. You have to try to go to the source, which is often very hard to track, right? You never really know what the source is. But when you've got people like Jack, and you've got the core developers who have been diving through this code now for a decade and a half, looking for ways to upgrade it, looking for ways to make sure that this stays the strongest store of value on the planet, right? You can draw some comfort for yourself that people are really invested in making sure that this stays the best solution.
And the best part is that Bitcoin's one of the only truly free markets in the world to this day, where there's not a central party or central government that's picking the winner. And so I tell you what, if you guys want to read New York Times headlines and read Wikipedia and make your decisions, I'll do the hard work. I'll educate myself. I'll buy Bitcoin, and I get rewarded for that. I get bigger houses. I get nicer travel. So you guys do make decisions you want, but it's a free market. You're going to pay the consequences.
So let me ask you guys, what do you think about Ethereum?
Garbage, bullshit, trash.
I don't think that negatively, but I would say that Jack. This is Jack's living. He spends his life in Bitcoin and crypto. This is not my living, and so I don't know if I would call myself a Bitcoin maximalist exactly. But at this point in my life, it's like I'm going to pay attention to Bitcoin, and that's it. I'm sure maybe someone else will create some good projects at some point in time. But then you look at the last 7 years, and how many scams have there been? There have been it's just scam. So unless I had my life to do research into what this project is and who's backing it, like I'm just kind of going to.
Well, just look at the way the policies change on Ethereum, right? Yeah. If something's not set, like Bitcoin's set, when the people come out and say, well, how do we know there's only going to be 21 million? You go, well, because there's like 5 lines of code that tell you. Ethereum changes its monetary policy.
I'll give you a better answer. I think Bitcoin's the only money in cryptocurrencies. It's the only thing that's built to be money, which we've talked extensively about what that is, why you'd hold it. I think everything else is technology. So they're talking about we're going to distribute this, decentralize that. But I don't, what is that? It's not where I store my time, energy. People say, well, Ethereum has utility. I'll tell you, the most successful utility token in human history is the US dollar. It's got about 5 billion daily active users. Really useful. There's a lot of utility in it. Does anyone want to hold it for the long term? We've spent this whole podcast saying no. Yeah. So why would I hold these things? How much do I have to trust the people that created it? How do they make decisions? What's it useful for? How am I supposed to value it? Guys, I'm telling you, I've been in this space for 12 years. None of those questions have ever been answered. The value accrual has been by drawing a false comparison to Bitcoin and rent seeking off of this trend that Bitcoin and Satoshi created. So that's why my initial reaction is bullshit, because there's a little bit of anger there of like, you guys are riding the coattails of this technology with no clear value creation whatsoever. You're clearly not money. So and that goes for any of these coins outside Bitcoin. I've never found one. And the whole utility narrative, well, the dollar's useful. I don't want to hold that either. So I just don't get it.
You have to be able to extrapolate how this is going to benefit you in your real life. And if you can't tell people that, it's very tough for someone to say this thing should be immensely valuable. And I think that's what happens in a lot of the broader crypto ecosystem. The value that it seems to hold to a lot of people, and I'm not just talking Ethereum, I'm talking all the other ones, because I went down that rabbit hole too, right? It's almost like a rite of passage when you first find these things.
You got to buy some shit coins.
You got to go.
You got to lose your money.
You got to go screw up big time, right? And so I got in earlier, and you see all these people making all these money on all these dog coins and all, and you're like, wow, people are really valuing these, but they're not. They're speculating on these, right? And it's a way to prey on people that don't understand or that are desperate.
I don't know. I'm up $2,000 on Doge.
Well, there you go. See, we got at least one winner in the room. But eventually, over time, your focus narrows and you go, which one of these can I really define a value proposition in my own life? What problem is it solving for me?
So the rest of them are kind of like gambling. If you want to go gamble, fine. So if one of my friends, they come to me, one of them said $100,000 on, was it Doge last week or something?
I don't know.
What are you doing? No.
Hey, look, you got to buy Hawk to him, man. I'm thinking about buying the dip.
She's
on that thing.
She's going to jail.
It's coming back.
Well, so we haven't spoken about what's the opportunity size of Bitcoin. So there's about $900 trillion worth of stuff in the world that people own. And if we're talking about money in that what you want to save and persist and exchange later for the goods and services you need, about half of that is people use as money, but people are using housing as money, equities as money, right? Yeah. But you can safely estimate the opportunity for Bitcoin is about $450 trillion worth of opportunity size, because that's the amount of wealth in the world today that people are just trying to save. Like, people are always like, what's the use case for Bitcoin? I can't buy pizza. The use case is keeping your money. How about that? Did you ever need to do that? Is working hard, earning something, and being able to fucking keep it.
Yes.
Is that a use case? So that's how big it is. When people say, oh, this technology is going to distribute dental, how big is that use case?
Well, when they say something like
$100 million opportunity set at best?
Well, when they say, what's the use case, you realize they don't understand what is money.
100%.
It's money. It's the best money that humans have ever created. And 8 billion people use money every single day.
But if Solana's like a really valuable technology, whatever, I actually don't even follow these shitcoins enough, but it's like Amazon's valuable technology. We'd all agree at the table? Yep, okay, sure. What's the opportunity that, what's it, $2 trillion company, $1 trillion company, something like that, right? So Solana's ceiling is like, oh man, if they could be as successful as Amazon, which in your life, get the hell out of here. But let's just assume, but if Bitcoin is successful, it's 500 times of an opportunity bigger for the world. So I think these things are an utter and complete distraction. Sorry, rant over.
I'm just like, I don't even know how to find the Hawk Tua coin, to be honest, because there's like 87.
That was
nobody
such
can find
a
it 'cause it
scam.
disappeared,
And you know, actually, one of my friends, John, shout out John Kim, he said,
Can you pull this up? Look at this. It's like when you go to search for
so
Hawk
gross.
Tua, there's like a bunch of fake ones. It's like, which one is?
Well, he said that,
ultimate
he said in the last cycle, because there's all this bullshit that always comes up, and he said, the unfortunate thing is these high time preference behaviors is really smart kids coming out of college realize they can come create some type of shit Bitcoin blockchain project and then make $100 million overnight and cash out. And that's the easiest way to make a whole bunch of money. And so you have all these people doing all these bullshit coins. And so, if you watched for the last 7 years and you see just scam after scam after scam, it's like, I'm just going to stay away from all of that.
You gotta, if you go onto YouTube, you can watch people doing it live. I saw a video the other day of some 12-year-old kid launching some coin on Solana, and he rug pulled it live.
No,
it took like 30 or 40
Are you kidding
grand,
me?
just like that.
Are we taking that 12-year-old to jail?
The positive spin on this, though, is just how beautiful free markets are.
Oh, it's great.
You can get on podcasts, and I truly try and educate and really distill what is money. And I tell you guys, Ethereum's not something I'd want my kids to ever inherit, but if you're dumb enough to buy Hawk Tua coin, maybe you didn't need the value anyway.
It's artificial selection, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It is. And I think in the corporate world now, we're seeing a big shift in this as well, because you've got a company like MicroStrategy.
Wait, hold on. Zoom back out there. That was Tim buying the dip. He told us he was going to do it. Right there.
There's Tim.
That's Tim. That's Tim.
Hey,
He's the only guy on earth up on Hawk Tua coin.
You know what, man? It is sad that people are getting the rug pulled out from them on these things. Like, but Hawk Tua coin, like, you really got to ask yourself what you're buying. You know what this reminds me of? You guys remember the Beanie Baby craze in the late 90s?
Yeah, of course.
Everybody was like, Beanie Babies are being discontinued. There's Beanie Babies at every store I go to. They're worthless, but people were buying tons of them. It's like, what are you buying?
Yeah.
Is there utility in it? And so the obvious thing with Bitcoin is that very simply, very early on, the use cases I saw were tremendous. It was easy to remit. It was easy to transfer money instantly. So when you're doing like an ACH transaction, a purchase with someone overseas, it's moderately complicated. Even inside the U.S., there's all these different clearinghouses. Bitcoin eliminated and streamlined everything, and that's just a base utility. Smart contracts are possible with Bitcoin, the same as with any other thing. So instantly, it was like, oh, okay, you can see how the code works. You know how it works. You can take the choice to educate yourself, and it has a general utility. There's a reason to buy it, and that's why I'm saying, go back in 2011, I was like, maybe I should buy some of this, because I'm not just going to go on the internet and be like, Reddit karma, maybe I should buy that. I never considered why I would want Reddit karma. Reading about Bitcoin, the plans for it, and I was like, maybe there's something here. My friend talked me out of it. I ended up picking up some 7 months later, and then sold it when I made like a couple $100 off it. Like, woo, I'm excited. Hawk Tua coin, what is this? Dude, what are you going to do with it?
People inherently love to gamble. I mean, it's almost like to the point where it's a problem in America today, how much people love to gamble.
Well, why do you think there's a problem?
High time preference behavior.
Desperation.
You force everyone to be a speculator if they can't save.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, it's a lot. We got cultural problems. We've got boredom problems. We've got greed problems.
Yeah.
It's all part of a cultural sickness in general.
But it comes from that, like, instead of I'm just an engineer or I'm just a doctor, I'm an engineer and a speculator that has to earn an ability to make progress towards a home. And you become degeneracy where you're looking for a way to just stay afloat and just find a way to finance having a kid or finance a home or finance a vacation. And yeah, Hawk Tuah coin is, I'll tell you what, Hawk Tuah coin, no, in all seriousness, Hawk Tuah coin's got more upside than just saving in dollars.
There's at least a chance you're going to win.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Look,
Dollars
statement.
100%
It's
down.
rebounding.
This is Tim right here.
Dollars never come back like that.
Saving in dollars, you have a 0% chance winning saving in dollars.
I gotta
not
be-
zero in Hawk Tuah coin, right? That's where I think it comes from. Seriously.
I got to be honest though, at a 1/10 of a cent, I might consider buying some Hawk Tuah because it's funny.
Oh my gosh.
You know, like, hey, look, put like
Meme
$1.
value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I bought like 10 shares or whatever of DJT. And then when it went down, all of these leftists are like, haha, Tim lost all his money. I was like, bro, I spent like $100 on DJT because it's funny.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to own a piece of whatever that was because it made me laugh. I'll buy some Hawk Tuah because it's funny. You know?
We're going to see the price. We're not really watch this price spike live because you're talking about
No,
it.
but I
was
mean,
gonna say, this
so
might be
many
the Tim Pump.
degenerates.
I don't know
So
what the
many
time frame is.
degenerates.
I'm not going to tell anybody what to buy because that's always a
Yes.
mistake. People get mad at you.
Yes.
But look, right now, as of today, Hawk Tuah is up decently. Somebody just made some money.
I always, we know it's you. We saw you doing the trades over there. I always tell people, instead of say you need to go buy Bitcoin, I mean, I will say you need to go buy Bitcoin, but I'll say you also need to do your research first. Like,
Take responsibility.
take some responsibility, do some reading, and that's what this comes back to, is taking responsibility. Like, you know, most people, what is money and what is money in the bank? Most people don't realize, because we haven't had a ton of bank runs in America. We had a few last year. But, you know, the money in your bank account, if there is a bank run, it's not actually there. They lend it out at 20-1. Like, your money's not there. Whereas if you own Bitcoin and you hold it in cold storage, your money is your money. No one can touch it. It's not theirs. It's yours. But you have to take responsibility for that money. And a lot of people are like scared by that. They don't want the responsibility of actually holding their own money, which to me is really weird.
Well, if you don't do the homework, you are a speculator. Right?
Yes, 100%.
Like if you're just buying it and your only intent is, well, if
Number
it's
go up.
100,000 today, hopefully it's 110,000 tomorrow.
Yes.
You don't really understand what you own.
Yes.
Right? You haven't made it a core part of understanding the way that the world financial markets work and evolving your view on that. Once you evolve your view on that, I always tell people Bitcoin's the most stable part of any investment that I have. I don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah.
Because I know how valuable it is. So why on earth would I be selling it? For
I was
what?
just trying to pull up one of my favorite quotes. I'm convinced that any attempt to restore harmony in the world can only rest on the renewal of personal responsibility.
Great quote.
So great.
And I think it's so true if you
I thought you were over there buying Hawk Tuah coin.
No.
You're watching Jackpot.
you know I would never.
That's such a great quote, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, and reflect on where society is today. You know, people, their life is dependent on who's elected or who their boss is, or get out of here. You know, take ownership over your life.
But you have to take it personally. I mean, that's the biggest part, is it can't be sound bites. Even sound bites from, you know, us talking here, right? That can help pique your interest. But you really do have to do the work to understand it fundamentally
Yes.
yourself. That's what builds that conviction.
There's a really funny meme where it's you know the Wojak of the greasy guy with flies and like purple hair, and it's supposed to be like a leftist or whatever. It's there's like a normal looking Chad guy being like, after doing my research, saving up some money, I decided to buy a small amount of Bitcoin. I've seen a tremendous return of about 240%. This is a pretty good investment. And then the greasy, smelly guy's like, I was trying to buy drugs in 2011 and I'm a millionaire. It's pretty good.
That's so funny.
It is kind of wild. I met a dude a while ago, and he's probably a billionaire off of Bitcoin. He was like some anarcho-capitalist guy. Outright was just like he bought Liberty dollars. You guys remember Liberty dollars?
Yeah.
That guy went to jail. So this dude then saw Bitcoin and just started buying up crazy amounts of it because he's an anti-government, you know, conspiracy kind of guy. And now he's just super rich. He has no idea how it works, and he's like, I don't care. And I was like, dude, I was having a conversation with him, and he was like saying all these things, and I was just like, do you have any idea what you're talking about? And he's like, no. He's like, I just Bitcoin. Bitcoin's all that matters. And I was like, did you research it? Do you know what it is? Like, no. And I was like, and you bought a bunch? He's like, yeah. And now he's on private jets and he's flying around and I'm just like, this guy doesn't even know what he's talking about.
I'll defend the early Bitcoiners a little bit because I think there's bad rhetoric that, you know, these guys just got lucky, right? And there's, you know, what did they do to earn any wealth or any good standing in society? I'll say this. When a really good idea needed attention, needed energy, those people were there when no one else was. And the fact that that guy even put a bid in the market and valued it at more than zero is worth the private jets he's flying on right now, because look at how it's helping the world. So I do think I want that message to get out there. And you mentioned it, Tim, is buying it is half the battle. Keeping it is the other. There's plenty of stories of guys that got arrested through Silk Road stuff. It spent a decade in jail, came out multimillionaire. That's the forced hodl. That's you were
or even just
couldn't
holding
sell.
through the bear markets, because it's like as much conviction as you have, you are lying if at some point during the bear market you think like, damn it, am I a dumbass? Is this going to zero? Did I waste all my money?
A few years ago, Alice and I were talking about should we do a portion of employee pay in Bitcoin, and then we talked about it, and I was like, I think most people would be totally cool with it. And then we just didn't pursue it. It just kind of fell off the radar. And I'm pretty sure everybody who's here would have greatly appreciated a 20%. Because
they wouldn't held it. They wouldn't held it.
But they still would have made more money.
They would have made more in 2021. So I built, or 2020, 2021, one of those years, I think 2021. I built a disc golf course on my property. No, it was 2020. And I would have my wrestlers who are high schoolers, they'd come over to work. They want to work for $10 an hour, $12 an hour. Now they're like, I want 14 because, inflation and shit. But anyway, so the one summer I made a bunch of them a deal. I said, I will pay you in Bitcoin for whatever dollars you earn. So $10 an hour, you work 6 hours, I'll pay $60 in Bitcoin. And then I said, on September 1st, if whatever I paid you in Bitcoin is worth less than what you earned, I will pay you the rest to make it up to you.
Wow.
Just, I didn't want it wasn't a ton of money, right? I didn't want them to feel like I was ripping them off. Well, so that summer, Bitcoin was $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, And so some of them, if they made $1,500 that summer, they might have made somewhere, between 10 and 15,000 instead of 1,500. And I just harassed there was 3 or 4 of them that I mainly paid. And one of them claims to still have half of it. I don't know that I believe him, but most of them have sold it because holding it is hard.
But that's people. You don't have to hold it. I mean, if you're saving, you hold it. But like you said, you use a credit card and then you pay it off with your Bitcoin.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yes, you're not holding it indefinitely. This creates the liquidity in the market that allows people to get in if they have not gotten in.
Yeah.
So for a young dude who's working a summer job, this is what I would say. I'm not telling you guys what to do. You do your own research. I'm saying I wish 10 years ago I started using Bitcoin as a bank account at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when I needed to buy things, and I do, a new car, I would take out of my bank to buy the car. But here's the thing. If I put all of my income into Bitcoin, like it was a bank account, like I get a paycheck, convert to Bitcoin and save it, I could have probably bought 5 cars per year.
Yeah.
And I'd still have more US dollar value than I do now, which is absolutely insane.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd have 100 free cars just sitting around and more US dollars.
Yes.
So again, like high school kid gets paid in Bitcoin, spend the money at the end of the summer, buy your new car, do whatever
but
you
that's
gotta
high
do.
time preference behavior. Because I said, like, bro, you live in your parents' house, you ain't got expenses. Like, you ain't got. What are you gonna cash out and buy? Something you don't actually need. And that's what's wrong with America. My wife gets mad at me when I go on this rant. So many people buy so much bullshit they don't actually need, and they think that bullshit is going to make them happy, and it makes them happy for maybe a short window of time, but the bullshit doesn't make them long-term happy. And so, like, I have so many friends who are working these jobs that they don't actually like. So if you just saved in something that actually held its value and didn't buy bullshit all the time, then you could say, hey, you know what? I don't need this job anymore because I'm independently wealthy, and I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want.
Do you guys remember Bitcoin Cash?
I remember. Yeah, of course.
So at some point, Bitcoin forked.
Forked, yes.
And there were some people that they were like, they forked off Bitcoin Cash saying, this is real Bitcoin. I mean, it's trading for $530. So what happens is if you had 10 Bitcoin, when they forked it off, you would get 10 Bitcoin Cash. I immediately sold it for Bitcoin.
Smart.
I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'll take free money.
I couldn't believe explaining this to relatives at Thanksgiving. I was like, okay, you guys aren't going to get this. Some dude created money out of thin air and gave it to all of us. However, if I just created Jackbucks with this
Jerky?
beef jerky here, no one would value it. But here's the catch: He created money out of thin air, gave it to all of us, and then said he'd give his Bitcoin for it. So we all, everyone was like, what? Someone created money out of thin air and then gave you real money for it? It's like, yeah, I swear to God.
There was a short period where Bitcoin Cash was worth more. It spiked really high.
But if you do the chart like one against the other, it's
it's nuts.
pretty much down only.
Bitcoin Cash is
Supplies,
$500.
right? You'll notice they're similar. One's $100,000, one's $500. Right? There was also Bitcoin Diamond. There was all of them that kind of came out at the time.
And this goes to
ESV.
I love using chess as an analogy of, no one wants to play Jack's chess or Tim's chess, especially when I start losing and I say, well, okay, I'm going to change the rules. Your queens act like pawns, my pawns act like queens, and I call that Jack's chess. No one wants to play that. The rules of chess are the rules of chess, and if you lose at the game, get better at the game. That, if money is truly a measure of your contributions to society and it's supposed to work how it's intended to work, if you don't like how much money you have, then work harder and be more valuable to people.
I'm gonna launch my own crypto called Timcast Coin. I am declaring that it is worth nothing. It will never be worth anything, and I will never own a single one. And then some people are gonna gamble on it. Like
100%.
You should
you know what I mean?
partner with Hawk Tua.
There you go.
Strategic deal.
I'll call it Hawk 2.
I think that early on, though, like the messaging was always you buy Bitcoin, you hold Bitcoin, you never sell Bitcoin, you die with your Bitcoin.
Even Trump said,
you never sell your Bitcoin. I know.
Total.
But I do think that mindset has to shift a little bit, because if people are really going to adopt a Bitcoin standard for their personal lives, like Jack has, you have to start getting comfortable with that being that Bitcoin is the primary core of your entire financial life.
Yes.
And you're going to be working in and out of that constantly.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that you're buying it and dumping it all, right? It means that over time,
You're not buying it as a speculative asset.
as you're buying your goods and services on your credit cards, hopefully as Bitcoin becomes more valuable over time, you're actually paying less of your Bitcoin over time for your expenses. It strengthens your financial picture long term. That mindset shift is going to take a little while. The products have to get really good. I mean, Strike's doing a great job with this to help people understand that. Treat it almost like it's your own bank account and then pay your bills out of it.
What's fascinating, so my lifestyle got cheaper after I adopted Bitcoin and don't own any more dollars. And it's because what does it do to a man or woman if it's technically true?
I don't want to give this shit away.
It's technically true that all the dollars you have now are best spent this second, because next second they're worth less stuff. And so what does that do to a society, to a person, versus the opposite on Bitcoin? My Bitcoin is better valued tomorrow than today, so I only consume what I absolutely need. All of a sudden, like the interest of getting whatever bags and fancy whatever cars is like, I'm cool with an Uber, man. It's all good. And you are able to save. And conversely, if you are being bled to death monetarily by inflation in a currency that's being printed, then you become an active, addicted consumer, because your life's better off spending it now. Literally.
That's what they want. The government.
That's what they want.
After 9/11, George W. Bush said, "Go spend money." They want you to just short-term gains. Keep spending.
That's the premise of
keep
Keynesian
extracting.
economics. Is that you spend money all the time. You don't save it. They don't want savers.
They want to extract a portion of your labor. So if you're not spending any money, they're not extracting from you.
Yes.
That's how they got to play it if they want to engage in the dirty games. But to be fair, during COVID they got rid of the limits on fractional reserve banking. This is the other crazy thing people don't understand, man.
So crazy.
So how do I discover Bitcoin in 2011? Well, have you guys all seen Zeitgeist? Documentary in 2000s? No. Oh, you got to watch it.
I feel like I did, but it's been so long I don't really remember.
So there were a couple of big viral documentaries in the early days of the internet. Loose Change, 9/11 was one of them. People were sharing DVDs with each other.
Yeah.
And there was also Zeitgeist. And in this, what's the guy's name? I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Anyway, he made a documentary, and in it he explains basic fractional reserve banking. How does it work? The bank needs to hold only 90% of your deposit. Or so, I'm probably getting it wrong. It's like 9 to 1. They can issue out a loan.
Yeah.
They can create money as long as they have a certain amount to accommodate for that. Let me dramatically simplify it. If you put $100 in the bank, they're allowed to create $90.
Yep.
No. $900.
$900. Right, 9 to 1.
9 to 1.
They got rid of the limits in March, meaning they could give out an infinite number of debt to anybody at any point, meaning inflation was bound to go nuts.
Yeah.
And then it did. And we are swimming in it, and it's getting worse. The removal of that limit was basically like, this is apocalyptic for the US dollar. And we are still in it. is Donald Trump going to be able to solve a lot of this stuff? Well, it may be. He's saying he's going to get the prices down. Okay, I think he will with energy, but will it get down? It can never go backwards to the point where things are going to be as cheap as they used to be because of inflation.
Well, I mean, I actually think about that. So I think, okay, we've borrowed $36 trillion that we don't actually have, right? That's why we have a debt. And if we're actually going to pay that back, that means moving forward, we're going to have to spend $36 trillion less than what we make in order to get back to zero, if that's possible, right? You could do that a few ways. You could print more money to make $36 trillion not all that much. You could have austerity and spend less money. We're going to try to do that with Doge. Jack says it's impossible. We'll see.
Real quick, sorry. No, it's 90%. So they're allowed to lend out 90%. So in fractional reserve banking, if you put $100 in, they can create a $90 loan. So they don't take your $100 and give it to someone else.
Yeah.
They create a $90 debt, which just creates cash in
there. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then what happens is the individual with $90 deposits that into a bank, and then they can issue out an $81 loan.
Yeah.
And so $100 turns into something like $900.
Got it.
With everybody getting until it winds all the way down. They removed that limitation in March. I do believe they re-implemented it afterwards, like a year or so ago or something like that. But just to dramatically simplify, instead of trying to get into the whole thing explaining fractional reserve banking, banks and the U.S. government, they're not printing money in Denver like people think with like a machine printer. They're going into a computer and going 50000, enter.
Well, that's
You're
why
good.
they're so protective over the banking system.
Yeah.
It's an extension of the whole scheme, 100%.
And that was, I mean, honestly, the reason if someone first told me about Bitcoin, and I wish someone would have told me earlier, I was like, oh shit, I need some of that. Is because I was a Ron Paul guy and I had read End the Fed a few times, and I realized why our dollar was flawed. I just didn't see an exit. I obviously bought some gold and silver prior, but I didn't know about Bitcoin until someone told me. And so, that's a great start for people is read End the Fed and figure out what they're doing there and why has no one ever audited it? And like, why does it still exist? And if Trump could end it, that would be tremendous.
Well, you look at Milei in Argentina.
Yeah.
And you look at El Salvador, and I just imagine Ron Paul, just when that happened, he put his feet up, he lit up a cigar, and he's like, told you.
I think what Trump wants is, because we talked earlier that inflation can be measured depending on what you want. You want a house, you want a Caesar salad, different inflation metrics, right? I think what he's going to try and engineer asset inflation is it's pretty clear. He wants consumer goods to come down. He's going to invest in energy, local production, tariffs, but then he wants the stock market. He wants Bitcoin to go up. Yeah. He's even hinted at, he's been really critical of Jerome Powell and the Fed, almost to the point where, does he want oversight over the Fed? Is he going to maybe potentially say that this thing can't be independent because I need to control the short term and the long term? What if the head of the Treasury was also the chairman of the Fed? Now, I'm not saying that'd be a good or bad thing, but to me, to your point, I don't know if this is a fixable problem. It's certainly the most complicated thing to inherit ever, probably as a president, as far as fiscal situation goes. And because asset inflation, to be clear for everyone, is good for the president, for Trump, because you get a lot of tax receipts. They get a lot of cap gains tax receipts if things go up, right? Things go up, there's the wealth effect. People feel rich, they sell it, they buy big stuff, economic growth. So hearing his comments, America's so weird. You guy gets elected and then we got to sit and wait. It's like blue balls. You got to sit and wait and see what's actually going to happen. He's not even in office yet. He can't actually make decisions and give direction. So we'll see. But based on what he's saying, I think that's what he's going to try and do. Asset inflation.
The reason why the international interests despise Trump so much is they want normalization between large economic blocs. They want a one world currency. They want to be able to control the entire payment structure. And here's the truth. We have a one world currency, and we've had it for a long time. It's called Visa and MasterCard. In reality, it's called the SWIFT payment system. I can go to any country on the planet and swipe my exact same credit card, and it will automatically convert. So I think what these people realized was, we don't need to create the Earth dollar. Let people transact locally with whatever they want. Give them the credit card that will automatically handle everything behind the scenes, and they're trading as if they have one currency. Donald Trump wants America and Americans to benefit, to be better off, to be wealthy. And this is in defiance of external interests that are not American. So there's a lot of money around the world that wants to stop a guy like him from doing what he's doing. So I agree with you. What does he want to do? He wants the cost of consumer goods to go down. He wants food to go down. He wants fuel to go down. And he wants assets to go up so that Americans become wealthier, can buy more, can have more. And that's bad for those who want a flat, stable, low-income planet that's easy to control.
And that it's still a tax on the people that don't have the assets. If the assets are inflating, then you're increasingly getting poorer when measured in housing, when measured in equities. But what's unique about Bitcoin is everyone can own it. Everyone can own it. You could buy a penny worth of it. So I would, again, recommend entirely on this show to get yourself some Bitcoin, because if Trump is going to try and engineer asset inflation, that's the one asset that's going to perform the best, and it's the only one that all of us can have. You can't recommend on a podcast. I think everyone should go get themselves some beachfront real estate in Miami, right? But I can say everyone should get a little bit of Bitcoin.
I've got family members who bought Bitcoin at like 30K and, at around 50 or 60, it dropped down to 30 and they were freaking out being like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm like, why are you acting like you lost anything? Do you need the money right now? No, you didn't lose anything. And now they're not complaining.
Yeah.
Now they're like, oh. I'm like, yeah, look, Donald Trump's going to come in, and I hope he does a Bitcoin reserve. I hope he starts doing everything he says he's going to do. It's only going to get better for everybody. That's it. I mean, if you live in a foreign country, well, then you're not America. I don't know. We're not supposed to be securing the interests of other countries.
They can buy Bitcoin too. Individuals in any country. They can.
Here's the other thing too. I've had friends tell me, like, when Bitcoin hit 12K or whatever, they were like, man, I wish I got in. And I was like, so buy some Bitcoin. And they're like, well, it's 12,000 now. And I was like, bro, buy a dollar's worth of Bitcoin. What are you talking about?
Yes.
And they were like, well, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, my friend.
Well, just to circle back to where Jack started is, one of them is going to go down in perpetuity. One of them is going to go up in perpetuity. So it doesn't matter what the price of the Bitcoin is. If you buy $1,000 of Bitcoin, if you waited 10 years, your $1,000 of cash is going to be worth less than your $1,000 of Bitcoin is going to be worth more. So it doesn't really matter how much of the Bitcoin you own if you just buy whatever you can.
So someone there's like a viral post where they basically tracked the price, the value gains of Bitcoin over time, and the prediction is if Bitcoin follows the exact pattern it's been following for the past 14 years, 10 years from now, Bitcoin will be at $1 million.
I think
sooner.
Faster.
Yeah,
but this doesn't take into account.
I saw that post though. They said, they said it was the amount of time from 0 to 10,000, 10,000 to 100,000.
Right.
Yeah. So
100,000 to $1 million will be in 10 years.
Yeah, on a logarithmic scale.
But right, and it doesn't take into account ubiquity. It doesn't take into account if there's mass adoption or a variable shock to the system.
Yeah. Because I mean, what Ben's expertise is corporate treasuries. And I told him in the last cycle, it was like MicroStrategy did it. Maybe there was a couple others, but it was really rare. And now it feels like and they're not huge companies, but it feels like there's about 5 being announced every day. Like, oh, this company bought 20, this company bought 100, And so like once that ramps up, and if America does it, to his point, it might happen
I think that it's a really important message. I think Bitcoin people misunderstand it as like some intellectual test of how smart are you to understand it. It's an ego test. Because if you think you're late to who? There's no Bitcoin CEO that's taking attendance. You're late because you're comparing yourself to other people, which that's vulnerable insecurities. That's being a small person. Because at the end of the day, decisions are made at the margin. You wake up every day, you do stuff for the world. You have to store your value in return for the stuff you've done. And you have to make the decision every day. Do I want it in dollars? Do I want it in this other thing? And so it doesn't matter what the price is. I will be storing my life's work in Bitcoin at the top forever. Michael Saylor quote. Yep. I will always make the decision to own the thing that no one can print versus the thing that a man can print, right? So
in 15 years, there has not been a failure of Bitcoin.
Nope.
So since its inception, what happens is it'll spike in price due to runs or due to some interest. There's an announcement that some company or some country is going to invest a large amount of money. So a lot of people want to buy it up quick. The price will spike. And then a bunch of people will rush in. Then the price will drop and they'll say, I'm ruined. And they'll sell off.
Yeah.
That's their fault.
That's
that's not an issue of Bitcoin at all.
Yeah.
If you put your life savings into Bitcoin at any point in the past 15 years, you have not lost anything.
You'd be up. You'd be up significantly in U.S. dollar
Significantly.
terms.
That's 100% this year.
I mean, Ben said this earlier. He didn't say exact
I'm
words,
not
but
making suggestions of what people should do. I'm just saying.
not financial advice.
Not financial
Not
advice.
financial advice. But you said, if you're only getting in for the number go up technology, if that's the only thing you're in for, then yes, when it goes down a little bit, you're going to get scared and you're likely to sell. But if you start reading and you educate yourself and you start realizing what this actually is, then it goes down a little bit and you're like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, I realize this is better. And in the long run, which is what I'm investing for, it's going to go up.
Well, you have to realize that pricing of these assets is set at the margins, right?
Yeah.
It's really only the ones that are available to exchange hands. And a lot of that does get driven by traders.
Yeah.
And the weird thing with the digital asset markets is the international exchanges have introduced huge leverage into these systems. They'll allow you to trade with 100 times leverage or
That's so
200
insane.
times leverage. What that also does is it does create that volatility because you've got really razor thin margins for liquidation levels.
Yes.
So you'll get these price movements, but as bigger and bigger capital has been entering Bitcoin, the volatility is actually starting to
down quite a bit,
decrease, right? And so you've got companies like MicroStrategy where they saw the value in that volatility and they tried to manufacture more of it successfully, right? They're like 2 times as volatile as Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
And what people miss about that entire strategy is that what MicroStrategy's doing is they basically created a loading dock for Wall Street capital to get brought to the spot Bitcoin market that can never make it there otherwise, right? So all these funds that are investing in all these convertible bonds that MicroStrategy's offering, they have a charter that only allows them to invest in convertible debt. That's it. That's the only thing they can buy. Billions and billions of dollars. And there's never been any returns there because you're investing in companies that have no volatility. They'll have 15 or 20 volatility. MicroStrategy's 120. So now he's basically capturing Wall Street capital and bringing it to the spot Bitcoin markets, which is a big shift. And the reason they all love him for it is because it's providing those returns. So people do still love it as a trading asset, but there's the fundamental part of the asset that individuals need to know about.
You guys know the story of how Max Kaiser tried to give Alex Jones 10,000 Bitcoin?
Yeah.
I thought he did give it to him.
Is that what? Yeah, he
Alex
lost
lost it, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes. Idiot.
That's $1 billion.
What idiot.
So it's funny because he still would have had it seized in the Sandy Hook lawsuit.
Well, but you can't seize anyone's Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's hard to even track it. I think they tried claiming that Alex Jones had hidden crypto assets, which, I mean, I'm not going to make any statements about Alex personally because I don't know, but who doesn't have crypto assets that are difficult to track?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? I encourage everybody who has it, you make sure you're reporting properly and all that stuff. But I'm saying you might have Bitcoin lying on a drive somewhere that no one even knows about, you know?
I was fishing a few days ago,
I saw the picture.
I tweeted out and I said, "Oh shoot, I think I lost my keys at IRS." and hey, it's a joke, IRS. I've been through the audits. I don't want any smoke, but
It was bold to tag them directly.
but it's
I had sympathy for your loss, but
it's
I
the,
thought tagging them.
it's the
Write it all off.
It's the age-old joke though of I mean, if I wanted it to be, it could be 12 words that I've stored in my brain. You know,
That's what's crazy.
If I could put an asset in my brain, I had the joke of like Bitcoin safe in your brain and gold is stuck in your butt. You know, if you've got to take gold through TSA, good luck.
Explain the 12 words people don't know.
Your key, your passphrase, the sensitive part that deems you the owner of the Bitcoin, can be represented as 12 plain English words. And so if you have trust in the future of your memory, so no head injuries or any, don't get in a fight. No.
Listen, I just had my brain studied in what month? September, and he said, "Man, your brain's great. Looks like no concussions ever."
Good.
I said, "Well,
Good. But
awesome."
So there's, trade-offs for everything, but you could store your key in with 12 words.
To be fair, it's like, the IQ bell curve meme?
Yes.
Where like the really dumb guy with his eyes falling on the side of his head.
great.
You've got that guy, and you got the monk guy, and the guy in the back end is like, "I bought Bitcoin." The smart guy's like, "I bought Bitcoin." And then the guy in the middle crying is saying, "This is stupid, isn't even represented by any value. Why would you buy this?"
Well, it also goes back to, if the government's going to quote unquote ban Bitcoin, they're going to ban English, because fundamentally Bitcoin is speech, Bitcoin's text, Bitcoin's information.
Yeah.
And so it goes down to like really fundamental human rights that we theoretically are born with.
I think they learned their lesson. I think because you had for a while, like I think Elizabeth Warren was talking against it.
She's the worst.
Yeah, and they were all saying like it's bad and it can be used for drugs and all this other stuff. And then they probably just looked and they were like, there's nothing you can do to stop this. This is a dam break, and you can go with the flow and try and move through it, or you can stand there and just get washed away. Like, so I think what we're probably going to see moving into the Trump administration, especially because they now have a crypto czar, is they're going to try to do to the best of their ability to utilize the wealth and power of the United States to have some influence in this space, as opposed to just trying to resist what can't be stopped.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They'll incentivize investment within the United States economy
And try and capitalize
Bring it
on
in.
it.
Yeah. Try to capitalize it. Try to be the leader in getting this.
Because I mean, Gary Gensler was freaking awful, and I mean he lost a lot. So thankfully he didn't have very much success in what he was doing. But he was torturing every crypto company, and it made some of them. I think some of them. You guys could probably speak on this better than me, but I believe some of the companies did actually leave the United States because of how hostile it was.
You know, there's that Paul Krugman quote. Let me see if I can find this.
He's almost as bad as Gary
Fax
Gensler.
machine.
The fax machine quote.
Yeah.
And then there's Peter Schiff.
Oh, he's
So,
insufferable.
Let me pull up this quote here.
Schiff's the worst.
Let's understand.
I do.
Here you go.
He's a nice guy. He's a funny guy. I debated him. Good guy.
So Paul Krugman said, by 2005 or so, it will become clear that the internet's impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machines. Yikes! That is bad. And then you have these constant tweets from Peter Schiff where it's just
Constant.
Bitcoin will never reach this amount. Bitcoin will. It's like every year he has to say it, and then it happens.
Every year, every day.
Notice that Peter
God.
Schiff owns no Bitcoin, but his wife owns Bitcoin and
Oh,
his
is
son
that
owns Bitcoin,
Bitcoin?
right?
Oh,
So he's a marketer, right? He knows what he's doing. He's got products that he's selling. This has become his shtick, and it keeps him in the mainstream perpetually.
And
right?
I've debated Peter Bitcoin versus gold, and the funniest part is I'm 100% Bitcoin. Literally, he owns $0. You ask Peter, what percentage of your net worth is in gold, and it's whatever 5%, 10%. It's okay. So you believe in gold 5%. Like I'm telling you, I believe in this thing 100%. I'm that confident. How can you be selling something that you're like when people sell you like 2%, you should allocate 2% of your portfolio. So that means you're 98% not confident. You know what I mean? So that I don't know. You can't take people like that too serious because they're not that confident in what they're selling.
Basically sounds like even he just has an insurance policy, right?
Right.
Like 2% is an insurance policy.
That's
Even BlackRock coming out and saying everyone should have 2%
Insurance policies
Bitcoin.
aren't a solution. If you want an insurance policy for a natural disaster, it's not preventing the natural disaster. I'm talking about I have a solution. Michael Saylor, I love this is, hedges are for when you don't know the answer.
Right.
And you want to diversify the potential. If you know the answer, I'm not diversifying out of Bitcoin for shit. I know the answer and I'm leaning into the answer as much as I can, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, man. This next administration is going to be interesting. What do you think about the cryptos are? What do you think they're going to do?
I think most people think very positively of David Sachs, and if you read / listen to him, he's not exactly a Bitcoin maxi, but he's not really far off. Like he's very, very pro Bitcoin, and he understands it deeply.
I think David's bright. The commitment that Trump is making, which is I want someone in position to service this space. Hear the criticisms, the feedback, build a plan. I mean, there was no role prior. And the fact that there is a role for that now is incredibly exciting. Now, is he going to make mistakes? What decisions is he going to make? He's a bright guy, super successful businessman, and has experience in the industry. That's all you can really ask for. I mean, everyone's going to I would love if Saylor was in charge, right? But what are you going to do? I think it's exciting.
You have to look at the collective too, right? Because it goes further out in his cabinet than just having a crypto.
Remember, they're all kind of
You've got Howard
Bitcoiners.
Lutnick in there. You've got Basent in there, right? JD Vance owns Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Like this is going to be by far the most pro Bitcoin administration that we're going to see.
The game theory and story of Bitcoin is you're better off on its team than in its way.
Exactly.
Period. And that's been the story. And I think Trump realizes that is who am I to get in the way of this thing for what?
Just if I had a time machine, it's funny they ask you, like, what would you do if you go back in time 10 years? Like, one of the most common answers now is buy Bitcoin. Like, the gain has been so massive on it. I mean, you could buy NVIDIA. People are saying, like, oh, NVIDIA stock, whatever. I'm like, company stock, though. The thing about Bitcoin is it's fascinating that every step of the way, I've had people screaming in my ears about this is a revolution. So even when Bitcoin was at $50, I remember talking. I'm hanging out with Max Kaiser, and he's saying this is like a revolution in asset technology. I don't know if you guys know, like Max created online trading in the first place with the what was it, celebrity? What was it called?
I don't remember the
I don't know
name.
this.
Yeah, he had a celebrity stock trading app that he had made and sold, and he effectively created. I could be getting this wrong, so forgive me, Max. But my understanding is that he was like he was a young Wall Street guy, and he basically created a digital way to trade assets on the internet in a rudimentary way and sold it. Bitcoin comes around. He's the guy who knows, and he's telling everybody, like, if you want to be rich, Tim, just hang out with me. That's what he told me. He told me that in like 2012. And I was like, yeah, I know, Max. I know. And it's funny because I was hanging out with Max and one of his buddies. His buddy was talking about, he's a billionaire guy. And he said, Square, the point of sale technology. He's like, that's the investment. And I was like, sure. So I bought a little bit of Square at like $15 and that's at 100.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these guys understand the economic system. I guarantee you, like, everybody and their mom wishes they were watching Max Kaiser's show 10 years ago and listened to what he had to say. And so, to be fair, when Max is saying right now his price target is 2.2 million, I go, okay, Max, okay. And then I look back 10 years and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
But by what date did he say that? Next year?
I don't know if he said, I don't know his time frame.
Well, it'll get there.
Eventually, yeah.
But I think a fool makes the same mistake twice. For anyone that has regrets about Bitcoin, don't do it again. I get some.
That's the thing. If you didn't buy it then, you can buy it now.
Right.
Right.
I
We're hardly at the top.
But my attitude kind of is I don't know and I don't care. Like the people at home, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I got to a point where I've been watching Bitcoin since 2011 when I first saw it, 70 cents, and was reading the stories about it, was using the Bitcoin faucet, had the app on my computer. It was much easier to mine back then for sure. And I've watched it spike and then fall and then spike and then fall and then spike. So at some point in the early I think it was like 10 or so years ago or something. I can't remember when Bitcoin was around like 1100 or whatever. I said, I'm done. I don't
2016.
2016 was it?
Probably.
It might have been around then. I was just like, I've watched it go from 70 cents to $1,000 and everything in between. And everyone keeps telling me, and all the experts, and like Max, for instance, and I was like, whatever, man. And I'm just going to buy a bunch, put it in my wallet, and I'm just going to forget about it, okay? Because that $5,000 I never spent is worthless to me.
Yeah.
Like I know it's $5,000 today, but 10 years ago it had the double or triple the buying power or whatever. And so I just bought a bunch. Whether anyone wants to buy it or not, it's happening. It's happening. Yes. It's happened, and it's going to keep happening. And you look at El Salvador, you look at Donald Trump's position on this. It's going to keep happening. So you do you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. All I know is I'm good.
Yes.
You know, we're gonna wind things down. So if you guys want to give any final thoughts and shout outs as we wrap up.
Yeah, I think instead of encouraging people to buy Bitcoin, I challenge you to think what else you can own. It's a really interesting, again, you can't buy Miami beachfront property. What else you can own?
It'll be underwater, they tell us.
Yeah.
They've been telling us that one.
And I don't know. I'm excited to be in America right now building on this thing. I've never been more optimistic about what I've been working on in the last 12 years.
And I'm glad Trump has said no CBDC and brought on a crypto czar. He is listening. It's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say before you buy, do your research. And because you can get in for the number go up technology and maybe you stay for the life change because it really will change the way you think about things if you get into it deeply enough.
Yep. And I would say, I think this is your chance to think differently as an individual, right? Really take stock of the things you believe and figure out why you believe them. And once you crack that code for yourself, it opens your mind to the different possibilities that something like Bitcoin brings to you as a sovereign individual. And I think that's a journey that's worthwhile for everyone to go down.
Where can they find you?
Jack Mallers is my real name. So Twitter, all the other stuff, give it a Google.
Where?
X.
Oh, X.
I still say Twitter.
Sorry, Elon. Lord Elon. My apologies.
I'm at Ben Askren on Twitter also.
Right on.
I'm at Ben Werkman. None of us are hiding. So
There you go. All right, everybody. This has been great. I love talking this stuff. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Look into it yourself. Figure out what makes sense for you. But it's coming. It's happening. It's been happening. And we'll be back tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. And we'll see y'all then.